The summer heat held its breath, waiting for a voice that would change the world forever. Imagine, if you will, a stillness so profound it feels heavy against your skin. It is the middle of August. The sun is a blazing, golden orb suspended in a cloudless, pale blue sky, casting deep, sharp shadows across the dry earth. In clearings, deep in the forests, on remote islands, and in the dusty courtyards of shattered garrisons, men are gathering. They are dressed in frayed, sun-bleached cotton. Their faces are deeply lined, etched with the profound exhaustion of a journey that has lasted far too long. They have been summoned to listen to a wooden box with a fabric speaker. A radio. For weeks, months, perhaps years, their lives have been measured in the loud, sharp sounds of conflict. The sudden crack of thunder in the distance. The heavy, mechanical roar of engines in the sky overhead. The frantic, shouted orders in the dark. But in this moment, there is only the thick, humid air and the rhythmic, buzzing hum of cicadas in the trees, a sound that rises and falls like the breathing of the earth itself. Someone gently turns a dial. A rush of static fills the air, like the sound of dry leaves sweeping across a stone path. The men sit on the ground, their knees pulled to their chests, or stand with their heads bowed in quiet reverence. And then, through the hissing static, a voice emerges. It is a voice none of them have ever heard before. It is high, slightly muffled, and speaks in a formal, ancient cadence that feels distant, almost musical. It is the voice of their emperor. For most of these men, this voice has been a silent star in their sky, a guiding light, a silent devotion they have carried in their hearts since they were small boys in short trousers. Now, it is real. It crackles through the warm air, speaking words that are difficult to untangle, wrapped in poetry and sorrow. But the men do not need to understand every syllable to feel the weight of what is being said. They hear the cadence of an ending. They hear the gentle, heartbreaking instruction to endure the unendurable, and to suffer what is insufferable. And then, the broadcast ends. The radio clicks off. What follows is a silence unlike any other. It is not the peaceful silence of a quiet winter morning. It is a stunning, deafening void. It is the sudden, shocking absence of a future they had been promised. Look closely at the men sitting in the dust. See the way their shoulders slowly, imperceptibly drop. For their entire lives, they have been moving toward a single, unchanging horizon. They were taught that their lives belonged to the nation, that they were petals on a cherry blossom tree, destined to fall beautifully in the wind. They had made peace with the idea that they would not return to their mothers, their wives, or their children. They had folded away their hopes for a quiet life, tucking them deep into the hidden corners of their minds, locking them away so they could do what was asked of them. Now, in the span of a few minutes, that horizon has vanished. The lock has been broken. One young soldier, sitting beneath the wide, sheltering branches of a banyan tree, slowly opens his hands. They are calloused, stained with earth and machine oil. He stares at his palms as if they belong to a stranger. Beside him in the grass lies his rifle. For years, that piece of wood and steel has been an extension of his own body. He has cleaned it, carried it, slept beside it. Now, it is just an object. Heavy. Cold. Completely useless. The realization washes over him like a slow, retreating tide. He does not have to carry it tomorrow. A few feet away, an older man with gray at his temples slowly reaches into the breast pocket of his tunic. His fingers are trembling, just a little. He pulls out a small, folded piece of paper. It is a letter from his wife, received so long ago that the creases are worn soft like fabric, the ink faded by sweat and rain. He has read it in the dark, using the words as a shield against the fear of the night. He had always read it as a farewell. But now, under the blazing August sun, he traces the characters of her name, and a terrifying, beautiful thought blooms in his chest. He might actually see her again. He might see the paper lanterns glowing on their porch. He might smell the sweet scent of rain on the cedar boards of their home. A single tear escapes, cutting a clean path through the dust on his cheek. He does not wipe it away. He simply lets it fall into the dry earth. All around the camp, this quiet unraveling is taking place. It is deeply private, happening within the silent sanctuaries of each man's heart. There are no shouts of joy. There are no cheers. There is only a profound, heavy bewilderment. When you have braced your entire spirit to hold up the weight of the sky, what do you do when the sky is suddenly lifted away? You stumble. You feel weightless, untethered, and entirely lost. The heat of the afternoon slowly begins to soften. The harsh, glaring light turns to a gentle, golden hue, casting long, peaceful shadows across the ground. A soft breeze stirs the leaves above them, bringing with it the scent of damp soil and green things growing. The natural world, which they had ignored for so long, is stepping back into the foreground. The war is over, but the trees are still here. The wind is still here. For many, there is a deep, suffocating guilt mingling with the quiet relief. They look around at the empty spaces beside them, thinking of the friends who marched with them, who shared their meager rations, who whispered stories of their hometowns in the pitch-black nights. Why am I sitting here? They wonder. Why do I get to hear the silence when they only knew the noise? This survivor's guilt is a heavy, invisible stone they will quietly slip into their pockets, carrying it with them for the rest of their lives. It is the toll of surviving the unsurvivable. As the sun begins to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in soft shades of lavender, peach, and bruised purple, the men slowly begin to move. It is the movement of sleepwalkers. Someone slowly gathers dry branches for a fire. Another unwraps a small portion of rice. The routine of survival continues, but the rhythm has entirely changed. Tonight, there is no need to dig trenches. Tonight, there is no need to stare anxiously into the dark, watching for shadows to move. The night is no longer an enemy hiding secrets, it is simply the night. They build small, modest fires. The flames crackle softly, casting a warm, flickering light on their tired faces. They sit close together, drawing comfort from the simple warmth of another human being. Still, very few words are spoken. What is there to say? Language feels entirely inadequate for the vast, empty space that has opened up before them. One man softly begins to hum. It is not a military march. It is a slow, lilting folk song from his childhood, a song his grandmother used to sing while sorting tea leaves in the late afternoon. The melody drifts into the warm night air, delicate and fragile. Slowly, the man beside him joins in, his voice a low, gravelly whisper. Then another. Soon, a quiet, soothing hum fills the campsite, a soft vibration that seems to settle the dust and calm the racing hearts. It is a song of the earth, of the home, of a time before the world caught fire. As they sing, they look up at the sky. Away from the smoke and the glare of cities, the stars are impossibly bright, scattered across the deep, velvety blackness like grains of salt. They are the exact same stars that shine over their villages, over the mountains of their homeland, over the roofs of the houses they left behind. Tomorrow, they will have to figure out what it means to be alive. Tomorrow, they will have to face the overwhelming reality of defeat, the shame that has been drilled into them, and the terrifying prospect of a long journey backward. They will have to figure out how to walk in a world that no longer needs them to be what they were. But that is for tomorrow. Tonight, they simply sit by the fire. They listen to the gentle crackle of the wood. They feel the soft, cooling breeze on their skin. They watch the stars slowly turn overhead. They breathe in the cool night air, filling their lungs, and then letting it out in a long, slow sigh. The silence that had felt so terrifying in the afternoon now begins to feel like a blanket. It wraps around them, soft and absolute. The war is over. The great, terrible storm has broken. And in the quiet aftermath, surrounded by the shadows of the trees and the glow of the embers, they close their eyes and, for the first time in a very long time, they allow themselves to simply rest. The steel had been a part of their bodies for so long that its sudden absence felt like a phantom limb in the quiet morning air. Listen to the soft, rhythmic crunch of worn boots walking over damp earth. It is early morning. A pale, gentle mist clings to the ground, wrapping the trees in a soft, gray embrace. The world is very still, as if nature itself is pausing to witness a profound, quiet turning of the page. Men are walking in a long, slow line. They do not march. The crisp, sharp angles of military discipline have softened overnight, melting away into the weary, gentle slouch of ordinary men who have carried a heavy burden for far too long. They are walking toward a clearing, and in their hands, they carry the tools of their former lives. For years, a soldier's rifle was not just an object. It was his shadow. It was his constant, unyielding companion. He slept with it pressed against his chest in the damp dark of the jungle. He cleaned it before he fed himself. He knew the exact grain of the wood on the stock, the specific metallic click of the bolt, the smell of the sharp oil that kept the rust at bay. He had been told, in loud voices on dusty parade grounds a lifetime ago, that this weapon was his soul. It was the physical manifestation of his duty, his honor, and his purpose. And now, he must give it away. In the clearing, a pile is slowly growing. It is a quiet, jagged mountain of wood and dark iron, rising from the soft, green grass. Watch a young man from a quiet farming village as he steps up to the edge of the pile. His uniform is frayed at the cuffs, and his face is deeply tanned by foreign suns. He unslings the canvas strap from his shoulder. The movement is slow, almost reverent. He holds the rifle in both hands, looking down at it. He brushes a single, stray pine needle from the barrel. It is a habit of care, deeply ingrained, impossible to break even now at the very end. He gently lowers the weapon onto the pile. It makes a dull, hollow clatter as it settles against the others. He steps back. His hands hover in the cool air for a moment, unsure of where to go. His right shoulder, which has borne the weight of that strap through endless miles of rain and blinding heat, suddenly feels impossibly light. It is a strange, unsettling buoyancy. He reaches up and touches his collarbone, tracing the faint, permanent bruise left behind by the canvas. He is no longer a soldier. In the space of a single breath, he has been undone. A few paces behind him stands an older man. He is an officer, and in his hands, wrapped in a piece of faded purple silk, is a sword. This blade did not come from a factory. It was forged in a quiet, smoky room generations ago. It belonged to his father, and his father's father. For weeks, he has carried a heavy, suffocating stone of shame in his throat. He feels he has failed the ancestors who entrusted this steel to his care. In the privacy of his tent the night before, he polished the blade one final time, watching his own tired, tear-streaked face reflect in the perfect, mirror-like surface of the steel. Now, he stands before the pile. He unties the silk cord. His fingers tremble, just a fraction, betraying the calm, stoic mask he wears. He bows his head gently, offering a silent, deeply private apology to the ghosts of his family. And then, with an agonizing slowness, he lays the sheathed sword atop the tangle of rifles. As his hands leave the scabbard, something unexpected happens. Beneath the crushing, overwhelming weight of sorrow, beneath the profound loss of identity, a tiny, fragile warmth begins to bloom in his chest. It is a feeling so completely forbidden that he dares not show it on his face. He dares not speak it aloud. But it is there. It is relief. It is the deep, secret, beautifully human exhale of a man who realizes he will not have to send another young boy into the dark. He will not have to draw that blade. He will not have to write another letter to a grieving mother. The terrible, demanding hunger of the war has finally been satisfied, and it has released him. He closes his eyes, letting the cool morning breeze wash over his face, and silently, secretly, he breathes out. All along the line, this silent, complex ballet is taking place. Men are surrendering their weapons, and in doing so, they are surrendering the heavy armor they have worn around their hearts. It is terrifying to be stripped of your armor. Without the rifles, without the helmets, without the strict, unbreakable rules that govern every second of their days, who are they? They are just men. They are sons missing their mothers. They are fathers aching to see how tall their children have grown. They are brothers who long to walk by the riverbanks of their childhood homes. As they walk away from the clearing, moving back toward their camps, their hands feel incredibly awkward. They slip their empty hands into their pockets. They cross their arms over their chests. They feel exposed, delicate, and profoundly vulnerable in the quiet morning light. But as the hours slowly pass, and the mist burns away to reveal a soft, pale blue sky, they begin to look at their hands differently. Sitting on a fallen log, a soldier turns his palms upward. They are heavily calloused, scarred by sharp rocks and hot brass. For years, these hands were instruments of destruction. They were clenched into fists, curled tightly around triggers, gripping the handles of trench spades in desperate, muddy nights. He looks at his fingers. He slowly opens and closes them. Without the weapon, his hands belong to him again. He imagines the feeling of holding a small, smooth porcelain teacup. He imagines the texture of a worn wooden pencil, pressing against a fresh sheet of paper to write a letter home that doesn't have to pass through a censor. He imagines, with a sudden, sharp ache of longing, the feeling of his wife's soft hair slipping through his fingers. The loss of the weapon is the death of the soldier, but it is the quiet, gentle rebirth of the human being. A few yards away, two men are sitting in the grass. One of them pulls a small, bruised piece of fruit from his pack. He does not have a bayonet to slice it with anymore. So, he simply breaks it in half with his thumbs. He offers the larger piece to his companion. The other man takes it, nodding his head in a quiet, deeply felt gesture of thanks. They sit together in the peaceful afternoon, eating in silence, the sweet juice sticky on their empty hands. It is a small moment. An incredibly ordinary moment. But in the shadow of the years they have just survived, this simple act of sharing a piece of fruit feels like a miracle. It is the first, tiny step on a journey of 1,000 miles. It is the quiet reclaiming of their humanity. As the day gently fades into evening, the sky turns a deep, bruised indigo. The stars begin to appear, pale and soft, scattered across the heavens. The pile of weapons in the clearing sits entirely abandoned, swallowed by the growing shadows of the forest. The metal grows cold. It will rust. It will be forgotten. In the camp, the men lie down to sleep. They do not have their rifles to pull close to their chests. At first, the absence is glaring, keeping them awake, a phantom weight that their bodies expect but cannot find. They shift in the dark, seeking a comfort that is no longer there. But slowly, the deep, exhausted quiet of the night settles over them. The air is cool and smells of damp earth and blooming jasmine. The distant sound of a stream softly murmurs in the dark. One by one, they let go. They uncurl their bodies from the tight, defensive postures they have held for years. They stretch out. They let their empty hands rest softly on the ground, or drape gently across their stomachs. The secret relief they felt that morning, that beautiful, fragile whisper of survival, finally spreads through their tired muscles. They do not have to fight tomorrow. They do not have to be brave tomorrow. They only have to be alive. And as they drift into a deep, dreamless sleep, their hands, finally freed from the weight of the steel, lie soft and open in the dark, ready, at long last, to begin the quiet work of peace. Long after the world had finally laid down to rest, there were men still hiding in the deep, damp green, holding their breath against a quiet they could not trust. Imagine a forest so thick, so ancient and endlessly woven, that the sky itself becomes nothing more than a rumor. The canopy above is a heavy tapestry of emerald, jade, and dark, glossy leaves, filtering the bright, punishing sun into a soft, perpetual twilight. The air here is heavy and warm, carrying the sweet, decaying scent of damp earth, crushed ferns, and blooming orchids. It is a world wrapped in a profound, humid stillness, broken only by the rhythmic dripping of water from a white palm leaf, or the low, vibrating hum of a beetle moving through the undergrowth. In this green twilight, scattered like fallen leaves, live men who have become ghosts. They move without making a sound. They have learned over the passing seasons to step where the moss is thickest, to breathe in time with the shifting of the wind. Their uniforms, once crisp and sharp, have worn away, replaced by garments carefully woven from tree bark, plant fibers, and the remnants of canvas tents. They have become a part of the landscape, blending into the shadows of the great, twisting roots of the banyan trees. To survive in this profound isolation is not a matter of fighting the jungle, but of surrendering to it. Watch as one of these men gently reaches out to harvest a wild yam from the soil. His hands are deeply tanned, the skin tough and calloused, yet his movements are incredibly delicate. He does not tear the plant from the earth. He digs carefully with a polished piece of wood, taking only what he needs, smoothing the soil back over the roots so the plant might grow again. He moves with a quiet, reverent gratitude for the tiny morsels of life the forest offers him. But his mind is not truly in the forest. His body wanders through the damp ferns, but his heart is walking the narrow, dusty streets of a village thousands of miles away. In the deepest pocket of his tattered jacket, wrapped tightly in layers of dried leaves and a precious, final scrap of oiled cloth, is his most vital possession. It is not a knife. It is not a compass. It is a small, cracked photograph. When the rains come, those long, heavy, torrential downpours that turn the world into a blur of gray water, he retreats to the shelter of a shallow cave. There, while the water curtains the entrance, he carefully unwraps the bundle. His fingers tremble slightly, treating the fragile paper as if it were spun glass. In the dim, shadowy light, he looks at the face of his mother. She is wearing a simple cotton kimono, standing before the wooden gate of their home. Her smile is gentle, her eyes soft. He stares at the image for hours, tracing the outline of her cheek with his thumb, terrified of the day the moisture might finally wash her features away. But his greatest fear is not the fading of the paper. It is the fading of her voice. In the profound silence of the jungle nights, he closes his eyes and tries with all his strength to hear her calling his name. He tries to remember the exact pitch of her laugh, the soft shuffling sound of her slippers on the tatami mats, the warm, comforting smell of miso soup simmering on the hearth. He holds onto these fragile memories with a desperate, quiet resilience. They are the invisible threads that keep him tethered to his humanity, preventing him from dissolving completely into the wild. He is not entirely alone. Beneath the roots of a great tree, he shares this hidden life with another. They are comrades, but the word feels too formal for what they have become. They are brothers of the shadow. They do not speak often. Words take energy, and in the deep jungle, sound is a risk. Instead, they communicate through a language of small, silent gestures. When one falls ill, his body burning with the invisible fires of jungle fever, the other does not panic. He simply goes to the river. He dips a frayed piece of cloth into the cool, rushing water and gently bathes his friend's forehead, over and over, through the long, dark night. He feeds him drops of water squeezed from a crushed vine. He sits beside him in the darkness, offering the simple, profound comfort of presence. They share everything, a handful of wild berries, a captured beetle, the dry corner of a sleeping mat. It is an everyday heroism, born of necessity and deep, unspoken love. They are keeping each other alive not for a nation, but simply for each other. And then, the rumors arrive. They do not come through the radio, for the batteries have been dead for longer than they can remember. They come from the sky. One morning, While moving quietly through a clearing, a man spots something strange caught in the branches of a fern. It is a piece of paper, stark white against the endless green. It feels impossible, like a piece of snow resting in the tropics. He approaches it slowly, his heart beating a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He plucks it from the leaves. It is a leaflet. The characters are printed in his own language. As his eyes scan the words, a profound confusion washes over him. The war is over, the paper says. Peace has been declared. You can go home. He stands perfectly still, the humid air suddenly feeling too thick to breathe. He reads the words again, and then a third time. To the outside world, this is a message of salvation. But to the man in the shadows, it is a terrifying puzzle. How can it be true? How can the great, unyielding purpose that brought him to this damp, lonely place simply vanish? In his mind, the world he left behind was a world of absolute certainties. To surrender was a concept so foreign, so deeply unimaginable, that his mind simply refuses to process the letters on the page. He brings the paper back to his companion. They sit together in the dim light of their hidden camp, staring at the white square. It is a trick, one whispers, his voice dry and hoarse from disuse. An illusion to make us step into the light. The other nods slowly. It is easier to believe in the cruelty of the enemy than to accept the shattering reality that their years of hiding, their years of suffering, the slow fading of their youth, might have all been for a war that no longer exists. To believe the leaflet would mean stepping out of the shadows, facing the terrifying unknown, and confronting a world that has moved on without them. So, with a heavy, unspoken sorrow, they carefully fold the paper. They do not throw it away, for it is still a piece of home, a connection to their language. But they bury it at the bottom of a pouch, tucking the dangerous seed of hope away in the dark. They choose to remain ghosts. As the years softly blur together, the edges of time lose their meaning. There are no calendars here. There are only the dry seasons and the wet seasons. The blooming of the ginger flowers and the falling of the breadfruit. They become the keepers of a suspended time. Watch them as evening gently descends upon the forest. The shrill cries of the daytime birds give way to the low, rhythmic pulsing of the frogs. The twilight deepens into a rich, velvety black. The men retreat to their small shelter. They do not light a fire. They sit in the enveloping darkness, their backs resting against the cool, damp earth. One of them softly begins to hum. It is a melody so quiet it could be mistaken for the wind rustling through the bamboo. It is a song about a river in his home province, a river that flows gently beneath bridges of curved wood, carrying cherry blossoms toward the sea. The other man listens, closing his eyes, letting the fragile melody carry him away from the damp earth, away from the endless green, back to a place of sunlight and warmth. They are trapped in a purgatory of their own profound devotion, locked in a cage built of duty and fear. Yet, even in this profound isolation, there is a poignant, tragic beauty to their existence. They have not lost their capacity to care. They have not lost their capacity to remember. They sit in the dark, two gentle shadows holding onto the memory of the light. They imagine the faces of their families, hoping with a quiet, desperate prayer that those they love are safe, that they are eating warm rice, that they are sleeping under a peaceful sky. They bear the weight of the jungle so that their families might live freely in the light. The forest breathes around them, a slow, heavy rhythm. The stars peek through the tiny gaps in the canopy, distant and cold. The men pull their woven blankets a little tighter around their thin shoulders. They close their eyes, drifting into a light, watchful sleep, dreaming of a tomorrow that never seems to arrive, sustained entirely by the fading echo of a mother's voice, waiting patiently in the shadows for a morning that they can finally believe is real. The longest journey a man can take begins not with a bold stride, but with a slow, hesitant step out from the shadows of the only world he has known. Imagine a winding, dusty path, cut thin through the dense, fading emerald of the wilderness. The deep, impenetrable canopy of the jungle has slowly begun to pull back, giving way to an open sky that feels impossibly vast and pale blue. Beneath this wide heaven, a long, quiet line of men is moving. It is not a march. There is no sharp cadence, no barked commands, no proud squaring of the shoulders. It is a slow, rhythmic shuffling of worn leather, bare feet, and frayed canvas against the dry earth. These are the men who have heard the quiet news of peace, and who are now beginning the grueling, heavy walk toward the distant shores, toward the ships that have been promised to them. Look closely at the way they move. They sway gently, like tall grass caught in a slow evening breeze. Almost every man leans upon a walking stick, a length of green bamboo cut hastily from the forest edge, its surface worn smooth by the frantic, tight grip of exhausted hands. But more often than they lean on the bamboo, they lean upon each other. Watch as a younger man, his face hollowed by hunger and his uniform hanging loose from his narrow frame, stumbles slightly on a hidden root. He does not fall. Before his knees can even brush the dirt, the man beside him reaches out. An older, withered hand firmly grasps his elbow, lifting him gently, holding him steady until the younger man finds his footing again. No words are exchanged. A soft, reassuring squeeze of the arm, a slight, weary nod, and the two men continue their slow walk forward, their shoulders practically touching. This is the quiet poetry of their survival. The strict hierarchies of the past have melted away under the humid sun. They are no longer commanders and subordinates, they are simply brothers, bound together by the profound, singular desire to see the ocean. They carry each other's weight. When one man's legs refuse to take another step, another man simply shifts his own meager pack, places a supportive arm around a trembling waist, and lends his own quiet strength. They are a single, breathing organism, a fragile chain of human endurance stretching along the dusty road. The heat of the afternoon sun presses down on their shoulders like a warm, heavy blanket. The air hums with the dizzying song of cicadas, a sound so constant it becomes a kind of silence of its own. To survive the excruciating physical toll of placing one aching foot in front of the other, hour after hour, the men must leave their exhausted bodies behind. They retreat into the quiet, protected sanctuaries of their own minds. Listen to the soft, gentle murmurs drifting down the line. To keep the fear and the exhaustion at bay, they begin to dream aloud. They do not speak of the war. They do not speak of the dark jumble behind them. They speak, with a deep, almost religious reverence, of food. White rice, one man whispers, his eyes focused entirely on the dusty heels of the man in front of him. A small, ceramic bowl of perfectly steamed white rice. So hot that the steam curls up and fogs your eyelashes. The man beside him closes his eyes for a brief moment as he walks, letting the image wash over him. Yes, he answers, his voice a dry, raspy exhale. With a single, salty pickled plum pressed right into the center. And a cup of roasted green tea, poured from a cast iron kettle. They trade these memories back and forth like precious coins. They describe the exact crunch of a yellow radish, the rich, comforting scent of sweet soy sauce simmering in a shallow pan, the delicate, flaky texture of a salted fish grilled over charcoal. In the overwhelming heat of the foreign wilderness, these simple, ordinary meals become a magical, sustaining force. The mere thought of a kitchen hearth, of a wife or mother blowing gently on the glowing orange coals, provides a burst of invisible energy that carries them through another mile. They are sustained by the memories of the ordinary. They long for the things they once ignored, the sound of a paper door sliding open in the morning, the smell of damp cedar after a summer rain, the distant, hollow echo of a temple bell ringing at dusk. These quiet memories are the soft, glowing lanterns guiding them through the dark tunnel of their exhaustion. As the sun begins to lower, casting long, golden shadows across the path, the line slowly comes to a halt beside a shallow, slow-moving river. It is time to rest. The men lower themselves to the grassy bank with a collective, quiet sigh. They untie their worn boots, massaging life back into their blistered, calloused feet. The water is cool and clear, tumbling gently over smooth, gray river stones. They cup the water in their hands, splashing it onto their sunburned necks and washing the thick dust from their faces. It is a moment of pure, baptismal relief. Nearby, 3 men sit together in a small circle under the shade of a weeping willow. One of them reaches deep into his pack and pulls out a small, tightly knotted handkerchief. With trembling, careful fingers, he unties the fabric. Inside lies a treasure he has guarded for over a year, a single, hardened piece of brown sugar candy. It is no larger than a pebble, covered in lint and dust. But to these men, it is more valuable than gold. The man finds a clean, flat stone and, using the heavy handle of his empty canteen, gently taps the candy until it shatters into 3 tiny, uneven shards. He presses one small piece into the palm of each of his friends. They do not eat it right away. They hold it, looking at it, overwhelmed by the profound generosity of the gesture. Then, simultaneously, they place the fragments on their tongues. They close their eyes. They do not chew. They let the sugar slowly, delicately dissolve, coating their parched throats in an intense, brilliant sweetness that brings tears to their eyes. For a fleeting, beautiful minute, the pain in their muscles vanishes. The weight of the years disappears. They are just 3 friends, sitting by a river in the late afternoon, sharing a moment of pure, unadulterated grace. It is an everyday heroism, this quiet act of giving away the very last sweet thing you own, simply to see a momentary light return to another man's eyes. They sit by the river until the sky turns a soft, bruised purple, and the first pale stars begin to prick through the fading light. As they prepare to settle into the grass for the night, a subtle shift happens in the air. The oppressive, stagnant humidity of the wilderness suddenly stirs. A gentle, cooling breeze sweeps through the leaves of the willow tree, brushing across their faces. A few men lift their heads, turning their faces into the wind. They close their eyes and breathe in deeply. There, carried on the invisible currents of the night air, is a scent they have not known for years. It is faint, almost imperceptible at first, but it is undeniably there. It is the smell of salt. It is the breath of the ocean. A quiet ripple of realization travels down the riverbank. Men sit up, looking at one another in the dimming light. The sea. They are close to the sea. With that scent comes a complex, overwhelming rush of emotion. The ocean represents the end of this grueling walk. The ocean is the vast, blue road that leads back to the shores of their homeland. It means the waiting white ships. It means rescue. But as they lie back down on the earth, resting their heads on their rolled-up coats, the smell of the salt water also brings a quiet, private terror. While they were hidden in the jungle, suspended in time, the idea of home was perfectly preserved, like a delicate flower pressed between the pages of a heavy book. But now, as the actual journey across the water looms before them, the fragile glass of that dream begins to crack. What will they find when they cross that ocean? They have heard the whispers. They know the skies over their homeland rained fire while they were gone. The quiet fear creeps into their chests, cold and heavy. What if the small wooden house with the sliding paper doors is nothing but ash? What if the hearth is cold? What if the women who made the steamed white rice are no longer there to wait for them? They do not speak these fears aloud. To say them would make them real, and they cannot afford to carry that reality on top of the physical pain of the march. Instead, they lock these terrifying questions deep inside their hearts, protecting one another from the crushing weight of their own anxieties. They lie close together in the dark, shoulder to shoulder, drawing warmth from the quiet, rhythmic breathing of the men beside them. The crickets begin their soft, vibrating lullaby in the tall grass. The river continues its gentle, endless journey over the stones, whispering secrets to the night. Tomorrow, they will wake before the sun. They will lean on their bamboo sticks, they will offer their arms to those who stumble, and they will follow the scent of the salt until they reach the sand. But for tonight, they simply let the cool breeze wash over them. They close their tired eyes. And as they drift into sleep, beneath a canopy of brilliant, quiet stars, they let themselves be carried away by the only dream that matters anymore, the smell of sweet soy sauce, the sound of a distant temple bell, and the fragile, beautiful hope of a quiet home. The world had become a vast, white canvas, and the only ink left was the silver steam of a man's breath. Imagine a landscape so wide and so still that the sky and the earth seemed to melt into one another, separated only by the jagged, dark silhouettes of endless larch and birch trees. This is the taiga. Here, the air does not just move, it sparkles. Tiny, microscopic crystals of frost hang suspended in the light, drifting like diamond dust through the pale, low-hanging sun. Everything is hushed. The heavy, rhythmic crunch of a boot on frozen snow is the only sound for miles, echoing softly against the cathedral of the forest. For the men who found themselves here, far to the north of the life they once knew, the world had suddenly and drastically shrunk. The maps they once studied, the vast distances of empires and oceans, had all fallen away. Their entire universe was now contained within the wooden walls of a low-slung barracks, the glow of a single iron stove, and the steady, comforting warmth of the person sitting right next to them. The journey here had been long, marked by the rhythmic, hypnotic clatter of train wheels over thousands of miles of iron track. They had watched through small, frosted windows as the lush greens of the south faded into the browns of autumn, and finally, into this eternal, shimmering white. As the cold deepened, the men drew closer together. They shared the thin wool of their blankets and the even thinner stories of their pasts, huddling in the dark corners of the railcars, finding a strange, quiet peace in the shared uncertainty of the road. Now, in the heart of the frozen north, survival is not a matter of strength or grand gestures. It is a matter of small, quiet things. Watch a man named Kenji. He sits on a narrow wooden bunk, his hands wrapped around a tin mug of warm water. There is no tea, but the warmth of the metal against his palms is a luxury beyond description. He closes his eyes and lets the steam rise to dampen his face, which is etched with the weariness of 1,000 winters. His coat is heavy, padded with whatever scraps of fabric he could find, and his boots are wrapped in extra layers of burlap to keep the biting wind at bay. Kenji is not thinking about the great sweep of history. He is thinking about a single, sun-drenched afternoon in a small village near Nara. He is remembering the way the light filtered through the paper screens of his home, and the specific, sweet smell of tatami mats warming in the sun. He holds onto this memory like a small, burning coal in his chest. In the taiga, your memories are your fire. If you let them go out, the cold finds a way inside. Beside him sits Hiroshi, a younger man whose eyes are wide and dark, reflecting the flickering orange light of the central stove. Hiroshi is afraid of the silence of the forest, a silence so deep it feels like it could swallow a man whole. But then, Kenji reaches out. It is a small movement, a gentle hand placed on Hiroshi's shoulder. There is no need for words. The weight of that hand says everything. I am here. You are here. We are still breathing. In these camps, heroism is found in the sharing of a crust of black bread. The bread is hard, frozen almost like stone, and it smells of earth and wood smoke. When the rations are brought in, the men do not scramble. They move with a quiet, somber grace. They divide the small loaf with a piece of sharpened wire, measuring the portions with the precision of a jeweler. To give away a crumb, to offer the softer center of the bread to a friend who is coughing in the night, is an act of supreme bravery. It is a way of saying that the cold has not yet reached the heart. As the sun dips below the horizon, which it does so early here, as if the light itself is too tired to stay up, the barracks transform into a sanctuary of shadows. The temperature outside drops to a point where the trees themselves begin to crack and pop in the dark, the sap freezing inside their trunks with the sound of distant pistol shots. But inside, there is a different rhythm. The men lie down on their wooden planks, packed tightly together for warmth. They become a single, undulating landscape of human heat. They sleep in shifts of breathing, the rise and fall of their chests synchronized by the proximity of their bodies. In the deepest part of the night, when the wind howls against the timber walls and the frost grows in intricate, fern-like patterns across the glass, someone begins to sing. It is not a loud song. It is a whisper, a low vibration that moves through the wood of the bunks and into the bones of the men. It is a lullaby. Kutsugie Neru. The sound of shoes ringing on a stone path. It is the song their mothers sang to them when they were small, tucked safely under thick futons while the rain pattered on the roof. One by one, other voices join in. They are gravelly, thin, and cracked by the dry air, but together they create a soft, weaving tapestry of sound. They sing of red dragonflies at sunset. They sing of the moon over a ruined castle. They sing of the simple joy of children playing in a temple courtyard. This music is their shield. It creates an invisible barrier that the Siberian winter cannot penetrate. For a few minutes, they are not prisoners in a frozen wasteland. They are back in the warmth of the humid Japanese summer. They can almost feel the weight of a cotton yukata on their skin and hear the distant chime of a wind bell. They sing until the fear recedes, until their heart beats slow, and until the darkness feels not like a threat, but like a heavy, protective velvet. Kindness in the taiga also looks like the written word. Occasionally, scraps of paper and stubs of pencils find their way into the barracks. These are treated with the reverence of holy relics. A man will sit by the stove, the light flickering over a tiny piece of gray paper, and he will write. He does not write about the cold. He does not write about the work of cutting timber or the hunger that gnaws at his stomach. He writes to a wife he hasn't seen in half a decade. The stars here are very bright, he might write. They remind me of the lanterns at the summer festival. Please make sure the plum tree in the garden is well tended. I am eating well. Do not worry about me. Sleep warmly. These letters may never be sent. They may end up as fuel for the stove or be lost in the spring thaw. But the act of writing them is a victory. It is a refusal to be silenced by the wilderness. It is a way of keeping a promise to a ghost. The men often read their letters aloud to one another in the hushed hours of the morning, sharing their wives and children, their gardens and their dreams, until the barracks is filled with 1,000 invisible lives, all vibrant and warm and stubbornly alive. When the morning finally comes, a bruised purple light bleeding into the white, the men rise and prepare for the day. They help each other wrap their feet. They check each other's faces for the white patches of frostbite, rubbing the skin gently with their thumbs to bring the blood back. This morning ritual is a dance of care, a quiet, repetitive heroism that happens every single day, without fail. They go out into the forest, where the air is so cold it feels like breathing needles. They work with the saws and the axes, the rhythmic thwack of steel against wood marking the passage of time. They do not work with anger. They work with a steady, meditative persistence. Each log cut is a testament to their endurance. Each hour passed is a step closer to a spring they must believe is coming. Sometimes, they find small wonders in the ice. A frozen berry, bright red against the white. A peculiar formation of frost that looks like a cherry blossom. They stop for a moment, pointing these things out to one another with a silent smile. These tiny flashes of beauty are enough to sustain them for another mile. They have learned that the great North is not an enemy to be conquered, but a presence to be lived with. They have learned that a man can survive almost anything if he has a friend to breathe with, a song to sing, and a memory to keep him warm. Their resilience is not made of iron, it is made of the soft, weaving threads of human connection. As the sun begins its short journey back toward the horizon, painting the snow in shades of rose and gold, the men return to their wooden shelter. They carry the scent of pine and cold air with them. They gather again around the stove, the small, flickering heart of their world. The world outside is vast, silent, and indifferent. The taiga stretches for thousands of miles in every direction, a white sea of trees and ice. But inside this small room, there is warmth. There is the smell of wood smoke and the low murmur of voices. There is the quiet, steady beating of 100 hearts, each one a tiny, defiant flame. They sit together in the gathering twilight, leaning on one another, watching the sparks dance behind the iron door of the stove. They know the winter is long. They know the nights are cold. But they also know that they are not alone. And in that knowledge, they find the strength to close their eyes, to listen to the soft breathing of the man next to them, and to dream once more of the sun warming the tatami mats in a house far, far away. The silence of the snow is absolute, but tonight, the lullaby in their hearts is louder. They rest, they endure, and they wait for the dawn, held safe in the quiet, resilient embrace of the winter taiga. A single sheet of paper, worn thin at the edges and gray as the winter sky, can hold the weight of an entire world. Imagine a room where the only light comes from a small, flickering kerosene lamp or the soft, orange glow of a dying fire. Outside, the Siberian wind is a constant, low moan, a restless spirit wandering through the black silhouettes of the large trees. But inside the barracks, there is a different kind of silence. It is a dense, expectant quiet, the silence of men who have traveled far inside their own minds to find the only things that still belong to them. In this flickering light, a man sits on the edge of a wooden plank. His fingers are stiff with the cold, the joints swollen and red, yet he moves them with a deliberate, haunting tenderness. In his hand, he holds a tiny stub of a pencil, so short he can barely grip it between his thumb and forefinger. He has guarded this pencil like a holy relic, hiding it in the lining of his coat, sharpening it with a jagged piece of stone. And before him, resting on a flat piece of wood, is a scrap of paper he found near the timber yards, a piece of an old cement bag, rough and dusty, yet more precious to him than any silk. He is about to write a letter. He does not begin with the hunger that resides in his belly like a cold stone. He does not write of the endless days spent sawing through frozen trunks or the way the frost bit into his ears during the morning roll call. Instead, he closes his eyes and breathes in the scent of the wood smoke, letting it transform into the smell of roasted chestnuts on a street corner in Kyoto. He waits until he can feel the warmth of a different sun on his back, the gentle, humid sun of a Japanese spring. His pencil begins to move, making a soft, rhythmic scratching sound that is the only music in the room. He writes to his wife. He tells her about the moon. He says that the moon he sees rising over the white peaks of the taiga is the very same moon that must be reflecting in the dark water of the pond in their garden. He tells her he can almost see her standing by the paper doors, her shadow long and graceful against the floor, looking up at that same silver light. By writing these words, he is building a bridge. Every stroke of the lead is a plank of wood laid down over the frozen forests, over the vast, gray plains, and across the deep, churning waters of the sea. He is no longer a prisoner in a landscape of ice, he is a husband walking home. Around him, other men are doing the same. This is the quiet, everyday heroism of the internment, a rebellion of the heart against the cold. They sit in the shadows, their heads bowed, their spirits fluttering away like birds toward the south. Sometimes, a man will run out of paper before he runs out of love. He will look at his neighbor, a silent question in his eyes. And that neighbor, who has been saving a small, clean corner of a newspaper, will tear it off and hand it over without a word. It is a gift of unimaginable value, an act of kindness that says, your story matters as much as mine. Go to your family. I will wait. Listen to the words they choose. They are simple, flowing, and poetic, because in the face of such vast isolation, only the simplest things remain true. They write about the way the light looks when it hits the moss on a temple wall. They write about the sound of a child's laughter echoing in a narrow alleyway. They write about the specific, salty taste of a bowl of miso soup made with the first radishes of the season. One man writes to a daughter he has not seen since she was a toddler. He describes for her the way the frost grows on the windows of the barracks, telling her it looks like the delicate lace of a wedding kimono. He tells her stories of the forest animals he sees, the tiny, brave squirrels who scurry through the snow, turning his harsh reality into a bedtime story for a girl half a world away. He wants her to know that the world is still beautiful, even where he is. He wants her to grow up without the shadow of his sorrow. As the letters are finished, a sacred ritual begins. The paper is fragile. It has been handled by many hands, and the dampness of the barracks threatens to turn it back into pulp. The men have learned to become masters of the fold. Watch as the man takes his finished note. He folds it once, very slowly, smoothing the crease with his thumbnail. Then he folds it again, and again, until it is a small, tight square, no larger than a matchbox. Some men fold their letters into the shapes of tiny birds, cranes made of rough brown paper, their wings tucked in for the long flight. They believe that the shape of the bird will help the words find their way home. These little squares are then tucked into the most protected places. They are placed inside small pouches made of scrap fabric, or sewn into the hidden seams of waistbands, or kept in the inner pockets of tunics, held directly against the skin. The warmth of the man's body keeps the paper dry, the rhythm of his heart beats against the names of his children. The fear that these letters might never be sent, or that they might be found and destroyed, is a constant, low-aching thrum in their chests. Yet, they continue to write. They write because the act of putting a feeling into a word is a way of proving that they still exist. In a place that tries to turn men into numbers, into shadows, into tools for labor, a letter is an anchor. It is a declaration that they have a home, that they have names, and that they are loved by people who are waiting by a gate for their return. Sometimes, in the deep of the night, when the fire has gone out and the barracks are cold enough that their breath turns to silver in the air, the men will share their letters. They do not read them all, some things are too private, too sacred to be spoken aloud. But they will share a single sentence, a small observation. My wife says the plum tree bloomed late this year, one might whisper into the dark. My son is learning to write his characters, another replies, his voice a soft, gravelly murmur. He says his hand gets tired, just like mine. In these shared fragments, they find a collective strength. They realize that they are all part of the same long, invisible thread. The letters are not just pieces of paper, they are the collective memory of a nation, kept alive in the pockets of men who refuse to forget the smell of the sea and the color of the cherry blossoms. As the weeks turn into months, and the snow piles higher against the wooden walls, the letters become even more vital. When a man grows weak, when the cold seems to be winning the battle for his spirit, his friends will sit by him. They will not offer empty platitudes. Instead, they will reach into their pockets and pull out their little folded squares of hope. They will read him the descriptions of home, the sound of the cicadas, the taste of the rice, the way the rain smells on the cedar shingles. They use their letters to pull him back from the edge, reminding him that there is a world beyond the white horizon, a world that is incomplete without him. Think of these letters as seeds. They are buried deep in the snow, protected by the resilience of the men who carry them. They are waiting for the thaw, for the day when the gates will open and the long journey home will finally begin. The man on the edge of the bunk finally tucks his small brown square into his pocket. He feels the rough texture of the paper against his thumb. He closes his eyes and, for a moment, he is no longer cold. He can see the path leading to his house. He can see the blue tiles of the roof and the small vegetable patch where the eggplants grow. He can hear the soft, sliding sound of the door opening. He lies down on his wooden plank, pulling his thin blanket up to his chin. The wind continues to howl outside, and the frost continues to creep across the glass, but he is at peace. He has said what needed to be said. He has sent his spirit across the ocean. All through the barracks, hundreds of little paper birds are resting near the hearts of sleeping men. They are silent, they are still, and they are filled with a love so powerful it can melt the thickest ice. These are the letters folded in the snow, fragile, beautiful, and unbreakable. They are the promise of a morning that has not yet come, but which the heart knows is inevitable. The men sleep deeply now, their breathing slow and steady, their dreams filled with the gentle colors of home, held safe by the tiny scraps of paper that tell them, over and over again, that they are not forgotten. The sea has a way of washing away the dust of the past, but it cannot always quiet the questions of the heart. Imagine a vast, shimmering expanse of sapphire blue, stretching out toward a horizon that feels, for the first time in many years, like a beginning rather than an end. The water is deep and restless, rising and falling in long, graceful swells that cradle the great vessel moving across its surface. This is a ship of a different kind. It is not painted in the jagged, dark patterns of camouflage. It is painted a bright, clean, brilliant white, a color that catches the morning sun and glows like a fallen cloud upon the waves. These are the repatriation ships, the vessels of the return. To the men crowded onto the steel decks, the white paint is more than just a color, it is a promise. It is a signal to the world that the time of shadows has passed and that the journey they are on is one of peace. Listen to the sound of the ship. Beneath the feet of the thousands of men who stand along the railings, there is a low, constant thrumming. It is the steady heartbeat of the engine, a rhythmic vibration that travels through the steel, into their boots, and up into their very bones. It is a mechanical lullaby, a persistent reminder that with every passing second, the distance between them and their homeland is shrinking. Thrum thrum. Thrum thrum. Each beat is a mile. Each mile is a prayer answered. The air here is different. It has lost the biting, needle-sharp edge of the Siberian taiga and the heavy, suffocating humidity of the southern jungles. Now, the wind is brisk and clean, carrying the sharp, invigorating scent of salt and spray. It ruffles the hair of men who have forgotten the feeling of a cool breeze that doesn't carry the scent of smoke. They close their eyes and tilt their faces toward the sun, letting the salt crust on their skin, breathing in a clarity they haven't known since they were boys. Along the railings, the men are packed shoulder to shoulder, yet there is a profound, shared silence. They stare out at the wake of the ship, the long, churning trail of white foam that marks the path they have taken. They are watching their pasts dissolve into the waves. The islands they fought for, the forests where they hid, the camps where they shivered, all of it is being swallowed by the vastness of the Pacific. But as their eyes turn away from the wake and toward the bow, toward the north where Japan lies waiting, the silence changes. It becomes heavy with a complex, swirling mix of emotions that no map could ever chart. There is hope, of course. It is a fragile, delicate thing, like a small bird held in the palms of the hands. It is the hope of seeing a mother's face, of feeling the rough texture of a wooden gate, of hearing the slide of a paper door. They carry these images in their minds, polished by years of longing. One man, sitting on a coiled rope, reaches into his pocket and pulls out a small, tattered photograph. The edges are frayed, and the image is fading, but he looks at it with a focus so intense it is almost a form of meditation. He is memorizing the life he is returning to, trying to bridge the gap between the man who left and the man who is coming back. But standing right beside that hope is a deep, cold dread. It is the dread of the unknown. They have heard the whispers, the stories passed from man to man in the dark holds of the ship. They know that the skies over their cities once burned. They know that the world they left behind is not the world that waits for them. The questions haunt them, moving through the crowd like a chilling mist. Is the roof still there? Is the well still sweet? Is there anyone left to boil the water for the evening tea? The greatest fear is not of the ruins, but of the people. They wonder if they will be welcomed or if they will be seen as ghosts of a time the country is trying to forget. They carry the weight of a silent shame, a feeling that they have survived when so many did not, and that the country they fought for has been transformed into something they may no longer recognize. They are strangers steaming toward their own homes. In the face of this overwhelming uncertainty, the men turn to one another. Life aboard the white ship is a steady and quiet, everyday kindness. The space is cramped, the food is simple, often just a bowl of thin soup and a portion of rice, but there is a gentleness here that was absent in the years before. Watch as an older soldier, his eyes clouded by the beginning of cataracts, struggles to navigate the steep, narrow ladder to the lower deck. Before he can even falter, two younger men move to his side. They do not say a word. They simply place their arms under his, steadying him, guiding his feet until he reaches the bottom. They stay with him for a moment, making sure he is settled, before disappearing back into the crowd. Near the galley, a man shares his meager ration of a small, salted plum with a comrade who has been struggling with seasickness. He presses the fruit into the other man's hand, a small gesture of solidarity. "Eat," he whispers. "The taste will remind your body of the earth." It is a small moment of heroism, a refusal to let the hardships of the journey harden their hearts. They are practicing how to be neighbors again. They are learning how to be brothers in peace. As night falls over the ocean, the white ship becomes a constellation of small, glowing lights. The sky is a deep, velvety indigo, scattered with stars that seem to hang lower and brighter over the open water. The men find places to sleep wherever they can, on the decks, in the hallways, tucked into corners. They huddle together for warmth, the proximity of another human heart the only comfort against the vast loneliness of the sea. In the quiet hours, when the only sounds are the rushing of the water against the hull and the rhythmic thrum of the engine, the ship becomes a place of shared memories. They tell stories in low, hushed tones. Not stories of battles, but stories of the things they miss most. "I remember the way the light used to hit the persimmon tree in my grandfather's yard," one voice murmurs in the dark. "I remember the sound of the wind bells in July," another replies. The way they seem to make the heat feel cooler. They talk about the specific blue of a certain river, the way the snow felt on the mountains of Hokkaido, the smell of a particular charcoal fire. These memories are their anchors. By sharing them, they are making the home they are returning to feel real again. They are building the Japan of their hearts, word by whispered word, while the ship carries them through the dark. One man, unable to sleep, stands alone at the stern. He watches the moon's silver path on the water, a shimmering road that seems to follow the ship. He thinks about the letters he wrote in the snow, the ones he carried in his pockets for years. He wonders if those words ever made it across the water, or if his family has spent these years thinking he was lost to the earth. He feels a sudden, sharp ache of vulnerability. In the war, he had been a part of a great machine, a single leaf in a massive forest. But here, on the white ship, he is just himself. He is a man with a name, a man with a family, a man who is terrified that he has been forgotten. He reaches out and touches the white paint of the railing. It is cool and smooth. It is real. The journey continues for days, a suspension of time between the life that was and the life that will be. The rhythm of the sea becomes their rhythm. They learn to trust the engine. They learn to wait. Then, one morning, the air changes again. It is not just the salt. There is a new scent carried on the breeze. It is the smell of damp earth, of pine needles, of wood smoke and green things. It is the scent of land. The word spreads through the ship like a soft, rising tide. Men who were resting spring to their feet. Those below deck scramble up the ladders. The railings are suddenly lined with thousands of men, all leaning forward, their eyes straining against the morning mist. And then, they see it. A dark line on the horizon. A jagged silhouette of mountains rising out of the gray water. It is faint at first, almost like a trick of the light, but as the sun climbs higher, the colors begin to emerge. The deep green of the forests. The gray of the stone. The white of the surf breaking against the shore. It is Japan. A profound, collective gasp ripples through the crowd, followed by a silence even deeper than before. Some men begin to weep, the tears flowing silently down their withered cheeks. Others simply stare, their mouths slightly open, as if they are seeing a miracle. They are looking at the earth they never expected to touch again. The white ship slows as it enters the bay. The engine's heartbeat changes, becoming a low, echoing rumble. Small fishing boats appear in the water, their sails like tiny wings. The men on the ship wave, and the fishermen wave back, a simple exchange of recognition that feels like the first true welcome of their lives. As the ship nears the docks, the men begin to see the people. Small figures standing on the pier. They are mostly women and elderly men, dressed in simple, faded clothes. They are holding signs, or just standing perfectly still, their eyes searching the decks of the white ship for a familiar face. The dread that has lived in the soldiers' chests for so long reaches its peak. They look at the crowd, their hearts pounding against their ribs. Is she there? Is he there? Does anyone recognize me in this tattered uniform, with this tired face? One soldier, standing near the bow, sees a woman in a dark kimono standing at the very edge of the pier. She is holding a small, white handkerchief. She isn't waving it yet, she is just holding it to her chest. He looks at her, and for a long, frozen moment, the world disappears. The ship, the ocean, the war, it all falls away. There is only the distance between his eyes and hers. He raises his hand. Slowly, hesitantly. On the pier, the woman freezes. Then, she begins to wave the handkerchief. It is a frantic, joyful movement, a white flag of a different kind. He has been seen. He is not a ghost. He is home. The white ship finally touches the dock with a gentle, muffled thud. The journey is over. The long walk through the jungle, the cold nights in the taiga, the days of silence on the sea, it has all led to this single, quiet moment of return. The men begin to disembark, walking down the wooden gangplank with slow, careful steps. They carry their small bundles of possessions, their tattered letters, and their heavy memories. They step off the steel and onto the solid, honest earth of their homeland. They are still tired. They are still uncertain. They still carry the scars of the years they have lost. But as they walk into the arms of the people who have waited for them, the white ship sits quietly behind them, its work finished. The sun shines down on the harbor, warming the stone and the wood. The gulls cry overhead, their voices bright and clear. And for the men of the white ship, the long silence of the war is finally, gently, being replaced by the soft, beautiful noise of a life beginning again. The memory of home was a brightly painted silkscreen, carefully protected in the mind, but the reality waiting for them was a canvas of gray dust stretching endlessly beneath the quiet sky. Imagine the feeling of stepping off a train into a place you have known since you were a child, a place where you know the exact shape of every cobblestone and the shadow of every roof, only to find that the world has been gently, terribly erased. When the returning men stepped out of the crowded, hissing railway cars and walked out into the open air of the city, they stopped. They stood perfectly still, their worn boots sinking softly into a layer of fine, pale grit. They had spent years dreaming of narrow, labyrinthine streets. They had sustained themselves in dark jungles and freezing forests by remembering the tight clusters of wooden houses, the sliding paper doors glowing like warm lanterns in the evening, the blue and white fabric curtains fluttering in the doorways of noodle shops, and the intricate, overlapping waves of dark clay roof tiles. But as they looked out now, there were no narrow streets. There were no wooden houses. There was only a vast, sweeping plain of ash, stretching as far as the eye could see, eventually meeting the faint, hazy blue silhouettes of the mountains. It looked like a landscape of dirty snow, frozen in the heavy heat of the afternoon. The city had been transformed into an ocean of charred timber, twisted iron, and shattered porcelain. The wind, which used to carry the comforting sense of sweet soy sauce simmering in shallow pans, roasted chestnuts, and damp river moss, now moved over the ruins with a hollow, whispering sound, carrying the dry, metallic scent of cold fire pits. This was the quiet shock of the return. There was no intense drama in this moment. There was no screaming, no sudden fall to the knees. The sorrow of this generation was a quiet, private thing, folded inward. The men simply adjusted the straps of their canvas bags, tightened their grip on their walking sticks, and stepped out into the expanse, walking like ghosts through the graveyard of their own childhoods. Watch a man as he tries to navigate this unrecognizable world. His uniform is tattered, washed 100 times until the fabric is as soft as a moth's wing. He is looking for the neighborhood where he was born. But how do you find your way home when all the landmarks are gone? He cannot turn left at the bakery, because the bakery is just a scatter of scorched bricks. He cannot follow the wall of the old temple, because the wall has crumbled into dust. Instead, he must navigate like a sailor on a featureless sea. He looks to the distant, unbothered curve of the river. He looks to the position of the sun. He looks at the angle of a distant, surviving hilltop. He walks slowly, his footsteps muffled by the thick layer of ash. Every now and then, his boot strikes something solid. A melted glass bottle. The twisted metal frame of a bicycle. The blackened, heavy iron weight of a traditional scale. These objects are the flotsam of a sunken world, poking through the gray tide. As he walks, he encounters others. The ruins are not empty. Scattered across the ash are the people who stayed behind, moving with a slow, deliberate grace. He sees an elderly woman with her hair tied back in a faded cloth, kneeling in the dirt. She is carefully sifting through a pile of rubble, using a pair of wooden chopsticks to pick out bent, rusted nails, dropping them one by one into an old tin can. Clink. 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 It is a small, rhythmic sound of survival. He pauses and bows his head to her. She looks up, her face lined with an exhaustion so deep it seems carved into her bones. She sees his tattered uniform. She does not ask his name. She does not ask where he has been. She simply reaches beside her to a small, cracked ceramic jug, pours a tiny amount of precious, clear water into a chipped teacup, and offers it to him with both hands. It is a moment of profound, quiet communion. Two survivors of the fire, sharing a drink in the wasteland. He takes the cup, feeling the cool porcelain against his dry lips, and whispers his thanks. She nods, turning back to her nails. There is no need for grand words. The shared silence is a deep, comforting blanket that wraps around them both. The man continues his slow walk until he reaches what he believes is his street corner. He stops. He closes his eyes and superimposes the map of his memory over the empty space. The great camphor tree that used to shade the intersection is gone, leaving only a blackened, hollow stump. From this stump, he begins to count his paces. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is where the wooden gate should be. 5, 6, 7. This is the narrow stone path that led through the small garden. 8, 9, 10. He opens his eyes. He is standing in the center of a square foundation made of pale, heat-cracked stones. This was his home. This was the place where he took his first steps, where he learned to write his name, where he said goodbye to his wife on a rainy morning that feels like 1,000 lifetimes ago. Now, there is nothing higher than his ankles. The paper doors, the woven tatami mats, the wooden beams, the silk cushions, everything has been reduced to a soft, gray powder. He slowly lowers himself to the ground, crossing his legs, sitting in the center of the vanished room. He rests his calloused hands on his knees. He does not cry. The grief is too vast, too absolute for tears. It is a heavy, still water in his chest. He gently reaches out and sifts his fingers through the ash. It is incredibly soft, like flour. His fingers brush against something hard. He brushes the ash away and pulls it free. It is a small, curved shard of porcelain. He wipes it clean with his thumb. It is a piece of a teacup, painted with the delicate, blue pattern of a sparrow in flight. He recognizes it instantly. It was his mother's favorite cup. He remembers the way her hands looked when she held it, the steam rising to fog her glasses, the gentle, comforting sound of her blowing on the hot green tea. He presses the cold, broken pottery against his cheek. In this tiny, shattered fragment, the entire world of his past is contained. It is a terrifying, beautiful connection to a life that has been blown away by the wind. But as he sits there, mourning the shadows of the past, the late afternoon sun begins to shift, casting long, golden rays across the ruined city. And in that shifting light, he notices something. A few feet away, standing stubbornly among the ashes, is a single, charred wooden post. It is the remains of the main pillar of the house. And tied around it, fluttering very gently in the evening breeze, is a small strip of white cotton cloth. His heart skips a single, painful beat. He scrambles to his feet, the ash billowing softly around his boots, and hurries to the post. Written on the cloth, in a hurried but familiar hand, are black ink characters. They are faded by the sun and the rain, but they are there. We are alive. We have gone to the uncle's village in the mountains. Please come find us. He reads the words over and over again, his fingers trembling as he traces the ink. The heavy, still water in his chest suddenly breaks, flowing into a warm, rushing river of relief. The house is gone. The city is gone. But the people, the heartbeat of his life, they are still in the world. They are waiting for him. This was the everyday heroism of the ashes. The people of the cities had left thousands of these tiny, fragile signs scattered across the ruins. Messages chalked onto melted safes, notes pinned to burned trees, names carved into the surviving stone lanterns. In the midst of complete destruction, they had meticulously, stubbornly built a vast, quiet network of hope, guiding their lost men back to them. As evening gently falls, the pale blue sky deepens into a rich, bruised purple. The stars begin to appear, shining with an incredible, piercing brightness, unhindered by the glare of the city lights that used to compete with them. The ruined landscape begins to change. Across the dark, sweeping plains of ash, tiny, flickering orange lights begin to bloom. They look like a scattering of grounded fireflies. These are the fires of the survivors. People who have returned to their plots of land, who have built small, makeshift shelters out of corrugated tin and salvaged wood. They are boiling water. They are cooking small, precious handfuls of rice. They are sitting together in the quiet dark, sharing the warmth of the flames. There is a profound, breathtaking resilience in these tiny fires. They are a quiet refusal to disappear. The world has burned them down to the very foundations, but they are still sweeping the dirt floors of their tin shacks. They are still offering water to strangers. They are still leaving notes for those who have not yet come home. The soldier sits back down on the foundation stones of his vanished house. He tucks the piece of white cloth safely into the breast pocket of his tattered uniform, placing it right over his heart. He pulls his knees to his chest and watches the small, golden fires glowing in the distance. He knows that the cherry trees that once lined the riverbank have been burned to charcoal. Their blossoms have turned to the very ash that covers his boots. But as he rests his hand on the cool earth, he knows something else, too. Deep beneath the surface, hidden in the dark, quiet soil, the roots are still there. They are bruised, they are buried, but they are alive. They are quietly waiting for the rain. They are gathering their strength in the dark. Tomorrow, he will begin the walk toward the mountains. Tomorrow, he will find the people he loves. Tomorrow, the slow, impossibly long work of clearing the ash and planting new seeds will begin. But for tonight, the air is cool and still. The stars are a soft, protective blanket over the broken world. The soldier closes his eyes, surrounded by the ghosts of his childhood, held safe by the promise written on a scrap of cloth, and finally allows himself to sleep in the quiet, gentle ashes of his home. A single wall of splintered wood held the heavy, beautiful weight of a million unspoken prayers. Imagine the vast, open shell of a great city train station. Before the world changed, this place was a symphony of motion and sound. There were the sharp, urgent whistles of the locomotives, the rhythmic clatter of iron wheels on steel tracks, and the echoing hum of thousands of footsteps hurrying across polished stone floors. But now, the grand arched roof is gone, leaving only the twisted, bare iron ribs reaching up like fingers toward a quiet, pale blue sky. The floors are cracked, dusted with a fine layer of gray ash and wind-blown earth. Yet, this ruined place is not empty. It is filled with people, and it is filled with a profound, sacred silence. In the center of devastated train stations, men stand for hours reading thousands of tiny, handwritten notes pinned to wooden message boards. It is a quiet, heartbreaking search for a familiar name, praying for a sign that their wives and children survived the fire. The boards themselves are makeshift things. Some are salvaged doors, scorched on one side. Others are simply long planks of rough pine, lashed together with wire and propped against the surviving brick pillars of the concourse. But from a distance, they do not look like wood or brick. They look like they are covered in a dense, beautiful winter frost, or a thick layer of white feathers. As you draw closer, the white texture resolves into countless scraps of paper. They flutter and tremble in the gentle, passing breeze. It sounds like the rustling of leaves in a quiet autumn forest. Look at the men standing before this wall of paper. They are the returning soldiers, their uniforms frayed and faded by years of sun and rain. They still carry their heavy canvas packs on their shoulders, too anxious, too suspended in the moment to set them down. They stand in long, orderly, silent rows. There is no pushing. There is no shouting. There is only a deep, shared reverence for the delicate task at hand. Each man is entirely still, except for his eyes. His gaze moves slowly, methodically, traveling down one column of fluttering scraps and up the next. He is looking for a specific arrangement of ink, a familiar curve of a character, a name that he has whispered to himself in the darkest, most terrifying nights of his life. It is an agonizingly slow process. The notes are small, and there are so very many of them. Watch one man as he traces the air with his finger, following the lines of text. He is afraid to touch the paper, fearing that his rough, calloused hands might smudge the ink or tear the fragile edges. His breathing is shallow. With every scrap he reads, his heart performs a painful, delicate dance, a sudden leap of hope as he sees a character that looks like his family name, followed by the quiet, heavy sinking of realization when he reads the rest of the word and knows it is not for him. But in this search, he is not just looking for his own family. He is inadvertently reading the intimate, beautiful, and tragic stories of thousands of strangers. The wooden board is a massive, open diary of a broken nation trying to stitch itself back together. He reads a note written on the torn edge of a ration book. The characters are hurried, pressed deeply into the paper. To my husband, Taro. The house is gone, but we are safe. We have walked to your sister's village. Please follow the river. I have kept your winter coat. He reads another, written on the pristine white back of an old train ticket, the handwriting elegant and precise. To my son. I come to this station every Sunday at noon. I will bring sweet potatoes. I will never stop waiting. And he reads notes that are simply pleas to the universe, written by those who have no idea where to go. Looking for the Tanaka family from the Eastern Ward. If anyone knows if they crossed the bridge, please leave a mark below. As the soldier reads these messages, a strange, quiet comfort begins to wash over him. Yes, there is sorrow here. But there is also an overwhelming, undeniable testament to the endurance of love. The fire may have taken the buildings, the bridges, and the streets, but it could not touch the fierce, stubborn devotion of the people who survived. Every single scrap of paper pinned to this board is a tiny, bright lantern lit against the dark. It is a declaration that someone is loved, that someone is missed, and that someone is worth waiting for. The physical nature of the notes themselves tells a story of quiet resilience. Paper is a rare and precious thing in the ashes. The people have used whatever they could find. There are messages written on the pale wood of matchboxes, on the inside linings of old envelopes, on the margins torn from discarded newspapers. Some notes have been written with ink, carefully shielded from the rain by small, makeshift awnings crafted from folded tin or pieces of oiled cloth. Others have been written with nothing more than a charred piece of wood scavenged from a cold fire pit. Yet, no matter how humble the material, each note is treated by the men reading them as if it were a priceless scroll. A sudden gust of wind sweeps through the open ribs of the station. It swirls the gray dust around the men's boots and pulls at the edges of the papers. Near the bottom of the board, a rusty thumbtack finally gives way. A small, square note flutters loose, dancing in the air for a moment before landing softly in the ash at the feet of the men. The men in the front row are too absorbed, too focused on the names at eye level to notice. But a soldier standing further back, waiting his turn in the quiet line, sees it fall. He does not ignore it. He does not step over it. He slowly lowers his heavy pack to the ground. He kneels in the dust, his tattered trousers brushing the ash, and gently picks up the fallen square of paper. He brushes a speck of dirt from its surface with his thumb. He looks at it for a moment. It is a message from a wife to a husband he does not know. He stands up. He steps forward, and the men in front of him, sensing his movement, quietly part to make a narrow space for him. He approaches the wooden board. He finds an empty, protected space near the center, beneath a slight overhang of wood. He presses the paper flat, finds the rusty tack on the ground, and pushes it firmly back into the pine, securing the stranger's hope once again. He steps back into his place in line. No one thanks him aloud. There is no need. In the ruined station, they are all the keepers of each other's fragile dreams. It is a small moment of everyday heroism, a quiet understanding that if they do not protect the hopes of strangers, who will protect their own? The hours stretch on. The sun begins its slow descent, moving behind the surviving skyline of the city. The harsh, bright light of the afternoon softens, turning into a rich, golden haze that fills the station. The light catches the thousands of white papers on the board, making them glow warmly in the dusk. They look like the illuminated paper windows of a vast, vertical city. The man who has been tracing the names with his finger finally reaches the very end of the board. He has read every scrap, every torn edge, every fading character. His family's name is not there. He lets his hand fall to his side. He closes his eyes and takes a long, deep breath of the cool evening air. The fear that has lived in his chest for weeks flares up, cold and sharp. The absence of a note could mean anything. It could mean they had no paper. It could mean they went to a different station. It could mean they are waiting in a place he cannot yet imagine. But as he stands there, bathed in the golden light, listening to the soft rustle of the papers, he realizes that the board has given him something else. It has given him a task. He reaches into his own canvas bag. He pushes past his folded blanket, his empty metal canteen, and his small bundle of rations. From the very bottom, he pulls out a tiny, precious stub of a pencil and a single, clean sheet of paper he has saved since he boarded the white ship to come home. He steps up to the board. He finds a small patch of bare wood. He presses the paper against the grain, feeling the rough texture beneath the fragile sheet. He grips the tiny pencil, and with deliberate, careful strokes, he begins to write. "I am here," he writes. "I have survived the ocean and the years. I am looking for you. I will check this board every day as the sun goes down." He signs his name. He borrows a tack from an old, weather-beaten notice that has faded entirely to white, and he presses his own message into the wood. He steps back. He looks at his small square of paper, now joining the thousands of others, becoming part of the great, fluttering tapestry of the city. He has added his own small light to the dark. He has cast his own invisible thread out into the vast, ruined landscape, trusting that the people he loves will eventually find it. The evening star appears through the open iron roof, a single, piercing point of light in the deepening blue sky. The air grows cool, carrying the scent of damp earth and the distant sea. The men around him continue their slow, quiet vigil, standing shoulder to shoulder in the twilight. The soldier finally picks up his heavy pack. He adjusts the straps over his tired shoulders. He does not know where he will sleep tonight. He does not know what tomorrow will bring. But as he turns away from the wooden board and begins to walk out into the quiet streets of the city, his step is a little lighter. He leaves the station not with certainty, but with the quiet, stubborn resilience of a man who has spoken his love to the world, and who is finally, truly, on his way home. The heaviest step a man can take is the one that carries him across the threshold of a home that has learned to live without him. Imagine a small wooden house, its timber weathered to a soft, silvered gray by years of wind and rain. The sliding paper doors, though carefully patched in places, still let in the gentle, golden light of the late afternoon. Outside, a solitary wind chime hangs from the eaves, catching the breeze and offering a delicate, hollow note that seems to hang in the quiet air. A man stands in the entryway. He has walked across oceans, survived the deep shadows of ancient jungles, and endured the biting frost of foreign winters, all for this exact moment. He has rehearsed this return in his mind 1,000 times. In his dreams, the door would slide open, there would be a sudden rush of tears, an embrace that would wash away the dirt and the sorrow of the years, and he would instantly become the husband and the father he once was. But reality is a quieter, far more complicated thing. He steps out of his worn leather boots, leaving them on the hard-packed earth of the entryway. He steps up onto the raised wooden floor in his bare feet. The wood is cool and smooth. He slides the paper door shut behind him, and the sound is exactly as he remembered, a soft, whispering glide. He is inside. He is home. But as he looks around the small room, a profound and heavy stillness settles over him. He looks at his wife. When he left her, she was a quiet, gentle presence, a woman who moved softly through the days. But the war did not only happen on distant shores, it happened right here, in the kitchen, in the garden, in the ash-covered streets. As he watches her now, he sees a woman entirely transformed. She moves with a brisk, unyielding efficiency. Her hands, once soft, are deeply calloused from working hardened soil and rationing meager handfuls of flour. She has carried the crushing weight of their survival on her own shoulders, becoming the fierce, undisputed protector of this house. He stands by the wall, his arms hanging loosely at his sides, feeling an overwhelming, haunting sense of uselessness. He is a missing piece to a puzzle, but while he was gone, the edges of the puzzle changed shape to close the gap. The house runs on a rhythm he does not know. He does not know where the tea is kept anymore. He does not know the new morning routines. He feels, with a sudden and chilling clarity, like an intruder in the sanctuary he fought so hard to protect. And then, there are the children. A small boy peeks out from behind his mother's patched cotton kimono. He has dark, wide eyes that stare at the man with a mixture of intense curiosity and profound apprehension. When the soldier left, this boy was a tiny weight cradled against his chest. Now, he is a child with his own thoughts, his own fears, his own life. The soldier kneels on the tatami mat, trying to make himself smaller, less imposing. He attempts a smile, but the muscles in his face are stiff, unaccustomed to the gesture. He reaches out a trembling hand. The boy does not step forward. Instead, he shrinks back, burying his face in the folds of his mother's clothes. To this child, the man is not a father. He is a stranger who has walked out of a dusty photograph. He smells of foreign earth, of old canvas, and of a deep, unspoken sadness. The soldier slowly lowers his hand, resting it on his own knee. A quiet, invisible heartbreak blooms in his chest. He realizes that you cannot simply step back into a river that has been flowing for years without you. As the afternoon slowly fades into a bruised, purple twilight, the soldier retreats to the corner of the room. He sits quietly on the floor, pulling his knees up, wrapping his arms around them. He makes himself as small as possible, an observer in his own life. This corner becomes his island. From here, he watches his family move through the evening. He listens to the soft chopping of vegetables on a wooden board. He hears the low, comforting murmur of his wife speaking to the children. It is a beautiful symphony of ordinary life, the very thing he dreamed of while shivering in the dark. Yet, he cannot seem to find the door to enter it. He feels like a ghost. He is an apparition sitting in the shadows, entirely invisible, tethered to the world of the living only by the thin, fragile thread of his own breath. As night falls, the true weight of his journey settles upon him. It is a suffocating, heavy blanket called survivor's guilt. He looks down at his hands, bathed in the soft, flickering orange light of a single oil lamp. Why are these hands here? Why is he breathing the cool, sweet air of his home, when so many others are resting forever in the damp earth of forgotten islands, or beneath the frozen snows of the north? When his wife sets a small, steaming bowl of white rice before him, he stares at it as if it is something he does not deserve to touch. He remembers the men who starved beside him, the men who would have traded everything they owned for a single grain of this rice. As he raises the wooden chopsticks to his mouth, the food tastes like ash. The warmth of the room feels like a betrayal to the men who are still cold. He eats in complete silence, his eyes fixed firmly on the woven pattern of the floor mat. He is terrified that if he speaks, if he allows himself to truly feel the comfort of this room, the ghosts of his comrades will gather at the window and judge him for daring to be alive. He carries their memories like heavy stones in his pockets, refusing to set them down, believing that his perpetual suffering is the only way to honor their absence. The house grows quiet. The children are put to sleep, their steady, rhythmic breathing drifting through the paper screens. The oil lamp is turned down low, casting long, gentle shadows across the walls. His wife sits across from him at the low wooden table. She does not ask him to speak. She does not press him for stories of the jungle, the ships, or the fire. She possesses a deep, profound wisdom born of her own suffering. She knows that words are often too jagged, too clumsy to hold the kind of pain he is carrying. She knows that the ice around his heart cannot be shattered, it must be allowed to melt, drop by tiny drop. Instead of asking questions, she simply performs the quiet rituals of care. She reaches for a small, cast-iron kettle resting on a charcoal brazier. The water is hot, humming a soft, comforting tune. She measures out a small amount of roasted green tea leaves into a clay pot. The smell of the roasted tea fills the space between them, earthy, warm, and deeply familiar. It is a scent that predates the war, a scent that belongs entirely to peace. She pours the hot water, letting it steep. Then, with slow, deliberate grace, she pours the tea into two small, handleless cups. She slides one cup across the smooth wood of the table until it rests just inches from his resting hands. She does not look at his face, which is tight with unspoken grief. Instead, she looks at his hands. She sees the deep scars, the dirt permanently etched into the creases of his skin, the slight, constant tremor in his fingers. She reaches out her own hand, rough, calloused, fiercely strong, and gently, so very gently, rests her fingertips against the back of his hand. It is a touch lighter than a falling leaf. But to the soldier in the corner, it strikes with the force of a brilliant dawn. Through that simple, quiet point of contact, a silent message is transferred. You are here, the touch says. You are heavy. You are broken. But you are real. You are not a ghost. You do not have to be the man who left. You only have to be the man who came back. He stares at her fingers resting on his. The rigid, defensive posture he has held for years begins, imperceptibly, to soften. The knot of guilt in his throat, thick and choking, loosens just enough to let a long, shuddering breath escape his lips. He turns his hand over, slowly, clumsily, and lightly rests his palm against hers. They sit like that in the dim light for a long time, the only sound the distant, hollow note of the wind chime and the soft breathing of the sleeping children. It is not a grand, cinematic reconciliation. The chasm between them has not magically closed. But they have built a small, fragile bridge of silence across the dark water. A little later, the paper screen slides open just a fraction. The small boy, unable to sleep, stands in the doorway, clutching a small, carved wooden horse. He looks at his mother, and then he looks at the man sitting across from her. The boy does not approach. But very carefully, he places the wooden horse on the floor, pushing it gently across the tatami mat until it stops a few feet away from the soldier. It is a tentative offering. A tiny, brave step into the unknown. The boy turns and scurries back to his futon. The soldier looks at the toy. He reaches out and picks it up. The wood is worn smooth by the child's small hands. He holds it carefully, feeling the warmth left behind by his son. A single, silent tear escapes his eye, cutting a clean path down his withered cheek, falling to absorb instantly into the woven grass of the mat. It is the first tear he has shed since the Emperor's voice crackled through the radio. It is not a tear of sorrow, nor of joy. It is simply the slow, quiet thawing of a frozen sea. He realizes, in the gentle quiet of the room, that healing will not come like a sudden sunrise. It will come like the slow turning of the seasons. It will come in the drinking of tea, in the sweeping of the floor, in the quiet exchange of passing glances. He will have to learn how to walk in his own home again, stepping carefully, learning the new rhythms of a family that survived without him, so that they can finally learn to live with him. The night deepens, wrapping the small wooden house in a thick, protective blanket of darkness. The wind dies down, and the world outside becomes perfectly still. The soldier lies down on his futon. The cotton is soft and smells of the sun. He pulls the heavy quilt up over his shoulders. He does not close his eyes immediately. He lies awake, listening to the symphony of the house, the creak of the settling timber, the soft breathing of his wife beside him, the distant, rhythmic rustle of the leaves in the garden. For the first time in an eternity, he does not have to sleep with one ear listening for the sound of approaching danger. He does not have to guard his heart against the sudden arrival of loss. He allows his tired muscles to sink into the floor. He lets his empty, calloused hands rest open at his sides. The heavy armor he has worn for so long finally slips away, leaving him delicate, vulnerable, and beautifully human. The ghost is gone. He is simply a man, lying in the quiet dark of his own home, safely tethered to the earth by the love of the people sleeping around him. And as he finally closes his eyes, surrounded by the ordinary magic of peace, he drifts into a deep, dreamless rest, beginning at last the long, quiet journey of staying exactly where he is. Even in the deepest peace, the heart keeps its own quiet calendar of ghosts. Imagine a house resting in the profound, velvety stillness of the middle of the night. The daytime world, with its bright sunshine, its busy markets, and the endless, forward-rushing energy of a rebuilding nation, has completely faded away. The streets outside are empty, bathed in the pale, silver light of a crescent moon. Inside the home, the family is asleep. You can hear the slow, rhythmic breathing of the children from the next room, a soft, comforting sound that rises and falls like the gentle tide of a calm sea. But in the center of the house, in the quiet shadows of the main room, one man is awake. He does not turn on the overhead lights. He has grown comfortable in the quiet darkness, navigating the space of his home by memory and the faint glow of the moon filtering through the frosted glass of the window. He moves with a slow, deliberate grace, his footsteps perfectly silent on the woven tatami mats. He is an older man now, his hair thinning and gray, his shoulders carrying the soft, permanent stoop of someone who has borne a great weight for many years. He walks toward a small, unassuming wooden shelf tucked into the corner of the room. It is not a grand, ornate altar. It is simply a clean, quiet space, dusted meticulously every single morning. He reaches into a small wooden cabinet and takes out a teacup. It is a very simple cup, made of thick, unadorned white porcelain. It does not match the delicate, finely painted cups his wife uses when guests come to visit. This cup has a tiny chip on the rim, worn smooth by time. It is ordinary in every way, except for the invisible, monumental purpose it serves. This cup belongs to a man who is not there. The veteran walks softly to the kitchen. He turns the iron handle of the tap, just a fraction, letting the cold, clear water run over his fingers for a moment. He feels the chill of it, the absolute, pure life contained in the stream. Then, he carefully fills the white teacup to the very brim. He carries the cup back to the wooden shelf, his eyes fixed on the surface of the water, ensuring not a single drop spills onto the floor. He sets it down with a soft, barely audible clink against the wood. Beside the cup of water, he places a tiny, lacquered bowl. Inside the bowl is a small mound of white rice, saved from the evening meal. It is no more than 2 or 3 mouthfuls, but it is perfectly shaped, pristine and white in the shadows. Finally, he strikes a match. The sudden flare of orange light illuminates the deep lines etched into his face, highlighting a landscape of quiet endurance. He lights a single stick of incense. He gently waves his hand to extinguish the flame, leaving only a tiny, glowing red cherry at the tip. A thin, delicate ribbon of gray smoke begins to rise, curling and dancing in the cool night air, carrying the deep, earthy scent of sandalwood and old pine. The man kneels before the shelf. He rests his calloused hands on his thighs. He closes his eyes, and he bows his head. He does not pray to a distant, untouchable deity. He speaks, in a whisper so faint it barely disturbs the smoke, to a boy he left behind on a burning island decades ago. He remembers the heat. He remembers a jungle so thick and humid that the air felt like warm water in their lungs. But mostly, he remembers the thirst. It was a thirst so profound, so consuming, that it became their entire world. He remembers sitting with his back against a rotting log, sharing the meager shade with a young soldier from a mountain village. The boy had talked, in a dry, cracked whisper, about the stream that ran behind his father's house. He talked about how the water there was so cold it made your teeth ache, how it tasted of crushed stones and melting snow. That boy never made it out of the trees. He never saw the cold mountain stream again. He became a part of the foreign earth, thousands of miles away from the home he loved. When the veteran finally returned to Japan, he found a country desperate to forget. The cities were rising from the ashes, new buildings of glass and steel were reaching into the sky, and a new generation was being born, a generation that knew nothing of the dark green shadows, the blinding sun, or the terrible, empty sound of a radio falling silent. The world was moving on. The music on the streets was fast and bright. The trains ran on time. The future was a speeding locomotive, leaving the past far behind in the dust. But the veteran could not leave his friend in the dust. To move on entirely, to simply forget the boy who dreamed of the cold stream, felt like a second, unforgivable betrayal. If he did not remember him, who would? If he did not carry the memory of that thirst, then the boy's suffering would vanish entirely from the earth, as if he had never existed at all. And so, this private, midnight ritual was born. Every night, when the busy, noisy world finally goes to sleep, the veteran creates this sanctuary of remembrance. He pours the water to quench a thirst that can never truly be quenched. He sets out the rice to feed a hunger that ended long ago. As he kneels there in the dark, the survivor's guilt that once felt like a crushing, suffocating boulder on his chest has slowly transformed over the years. It is no longer a sharp, jagged pain. It has been polished by time and ritual into a smooth, heavy stone that he carries with a gentle, protective reverence. The guilt has become love. It has become a lifelong, unbreakable promise of loyalty. The plum trees are blooming early this year, the veteran whispers into the dark, reporting the small, beautiful details of the living world to his silent companion. My grandson learned to ride a bicycle today. He scraped his knee, but he did not cry. He is brave, just like you were. He sits in the silence, listening. He does not expect a voice to answer him. He does not look for a ghost to appear in the smoke of the incense. The presence of his friend is not a supernatural thing, it is a profound, emotional weight in the room. It is a feeling of being understood, of being tethered to a shared history that no one else in the sleeping house could possibly comprehend. Across the country, in thousands of quiet, darkened rooms, this exact same scene is unfolding. Aging men are stepping softly out of their warm futons. They are walking into quiet kitchens, opening cupboards, and taking out small, unmatched cups and tiny wooden bowls. They are pouring water, or perhaps a small splash of clear sake. They are peeling a single mandarin orange, or cutting a crisp slice of an autumn apple, placing it gently on a small dish. They are a vast, invisible network of memory keepers. They are the grandfathers of a peaceful nation, men who spend their days smiling at their grandchildren, tending to small gardens, and sitting quietly on park benches watching the seasons change. But in the middle of the night, they are soldiers once again, standing a silent, solitary watch over the comrades they could not bring home. This is their everyday heroism. It is the heroism of an unyielding memory. It is the courage to keep a window open to the past, even when the wind blowing through it is cold and heavy with sorrow. They do not ask for monuments. They do not ask for parades or speeches. They only ask for the quiet space of the midnight hour, a few grains of rice, and a cup of cold water. In a world that is constantly urging them to let go, setting out the empty teacup is a quiet, beautiful act of defiance. It is a way of saying, you matter. Your life, however short, meant something. I am here, and as long as I have breath in my body, you have a place in this home. Through this simple act, the distant, lonely shores where these men fell are suddenly brought close. The vast, terrifying ocean is bridged by a single thread of incense smoke. The fallen are not left to wander the foreign dark, they are invited back into the warmth of the Japanese hearth. They are given a seat at the table. They are offered the very best of what the earth has to give. The incense stick slowly burns down, the cherry glowing brightly for a final moment before turning into a delicate, gray pillar of ash. The smell of the sandalwood lingers in the room, sweet and heavy, a perfume of memory and peace. The water in the white porcelain cup sits perfectly still, a tiny, dark mirror catching the silver reflection of the moon through the window. The veteran opens his eyes. He looks at the cup, and he looks at the rice. He feels a profound, settling calm wash over his tired shoulders. The duty of the day is done. The ghost has been fed. The brother has been remembered. He places his hands flat on the tatami mat and bows deeply, his forehead nearly touching the floor. Good night, he whispers, his voice thick with a gentle, enduring affection. Rest well until tomorrow. He slowly pushes himself up, his old joints aching slightly in the cool air. He turns away from the wooden shelf and walks back through the shadows of the silent house. He slips back beneath the heavy cotton quilt of his futon, the warmth enveloping him instantly. He closes his eyes. Outside, the wind rustles the leaves of the persimmon tree in the garden. Inside, the house is perfectly, beautifully at peace. The empty teacup sits in the dark, full to the brim with a love that transcends time, a quiet sentinel guarding the fragile space between the world of the living and the world of the lost. And as the veteran finally drifts into a deep, untroubled sleep, he knows that he is not alone in the dark, and that tomorrow, when the sun goes down and the house grows quiet, he will pour the water once again. To heal a broken world, a man must first learn to bow down to the earth and ask it to forgive him. Imagine a vast, quiet valley where the morning mist clings tightly to the ground, soft and white as combed cotton. The world here is waking up slowly, bathed in the pale, delicate light of a sun that has just begun to peek over the rolling blue hills. The air is cool, carrying the deep, ancient scent of damp soil, crushed pine needles, and the faint, lingering memory of wood smoke. Into this quiet morning walks a man. He moves with a slow, deliberate stiffness. For many years, his posture was defined by a rigid, unyielding pride. He was taught to stand perfectly straight, his shoulders pulled back, his chin held high, a small but vital piece of a massive, unstoppable machine. He was a soldier. He wore a uniform that commanded respect, and he carried a weapon that held the heavy, terrifying power of life and death. But this morning, the uniform is gone, replaced by loose, faded cotton trousers and a simple, rough-spun shirt. The heavy leather boots have been traded for soft, woven straw sandals that whisper against the dew-soaked grass. And the rifle, that cold, oiled piece of steel that was once an extension of his very soul, is nowhere to be found. Instead, resting heavily across his right shoulder, is a wooden hoe. It is a humble, clumsy tool. The handle is an imperfect branch of smoothed oak, and the iron blade is dull, pitted with rust, and heavy with the dried clay of yesterday's labor. As the man steps into the open field, he stops and looks out over the expanse of dirt. The soil before him is not the rich, dark, forgiving earth of a peaceful country. It is hardened, baked like a brick by the summer sun, and mixed with the pale, gray ash that drifted over the mountains from the ruined cities. It looks like a barren, forgotten moonscape. He lowers the hoe from his shoulder. He wraps his hands around the wooden shaft. Look closely at his hands. They are a map of his painful transition. The smooth, disciplined skin that once polished brass buttons and aligned iron sights is now torn and raw. Deep, angry blisters have formed across his palms, bursting and healing into thick, yellow calluses. Every time he grips the wood, a sharp, stinging ache travels up his arms, a constant physical reminder of his fall from grace. He raises the heavy iron blade into the air, and he brings it down into the earth. Thwack! The soil barely yields. A small puff of gray dust rises into the air, catching the morning light. A jolt of vibration runs up the wooden handle, rattling his bones. He takes a slow breath, raises the tool, and strikes again. Thwack! This is the agonizing, deeply humbling work of the return. For men who were once told they were the divine wind, the protectors of an empire, the sudden reduction to a laborer in a dusty field is a profound shock to the spirit. There are no medals to be won here. There are no grand speeches, no swelling anthems, no commanding officers to tell them they are brave. There is only the dirt, the blistering sun, and the relentless, silent demand of survival. In the beginning, he works with a dark, simmering anger. He strikes the earth as if it is an enemy, punishing the soil for his own grief, his own survival, and his own devastating sense of uselessness. He exhausts himself, swinging the hoe until his vision blurs and his chest heaves, trying to bury the nightmares of the jungle beneath the clods of dry clay. But the earth does not fight back. It simply absorbs his blows, patient and unmoving. A few yards away, his aging father is working the same field. The old man's back is permanently curved, shaped by a lifetime of bowing to the seasons. He does not swing his tool with anger. He moves with a slow, hypnotic rhythm, finding the natural fault lines in the soil, working with the earth rather than against it. The father stops, leaning on his hoe, and watches his son. He sees the furious, desperate swings. He sees the tears of frustration mingling with the sweat on the younger man's face. The old man does not offer a lecture on farming. He does not tell his son to calm down. Instead, he slowly walks over to the edge of the field, where a small, cool stream trickles over smooth gray stones. He dips a hollowed-out gourd into the water, filling it to the brim. He walks back across the broken earth, his steps careful and light, and stops beside his son. He holds out the gourd. The young man freezes, the heavy iron blade suspended in the air. He looks at the water, and then he looks into his father's eyes. They are deep, quiet pools of understanding. The father knows that the boy is not just fighting the soil, he is fighting the ghosts of a life that has vanished. The son slowly lowers the hoe. He takes the gourd with trembling, blistered hands. He raises it to his lips and drinks. The water is impossibly cold, sweet, and pure. It washes the dust from his throat and cools the fire in his chest. The earth does not rush, the father whispers softly, his voice like the rustle of dry leaves. It only answers to patience. Let the weight of the iron do the work. Save your strength for the planting. It is a small, quiet moment of everyday heroism. A gentle redirection of a broken spirit. The son nods, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. He hands the gourd back, takes a deep breath of the morning air, and turns back to the soil. This time, when he raises the hoe, he does not strike with anger. He lets the tool fall naturally. Thud. He pulls the dirt toward him. He takes a step back. He raises it again. Thud. Slowly, over the passing days and weeks, a transformation begins to take place. The furious, chaotic swinging becomes a steady, meditative rhythm. Lift. Drop. Pull. Step. It becomes a mantra of the body. In the repetitive, exhausting labor, the soldier finds a strange, unexpected sanctuary. When his mind is entirely focused on the placement of his feet, the arc of the wood, and the turning of the soil, there is no room left for the terrifying memories of the past. The loud, deafening echoes of the war begin to fade, replaced by the soft, comforting sounds of the countryside, the rhythmic crunch of the hoe, the distant call of a cuckoo bird, the rustle of the wind through the tall grass. He realizes that the ache in his shoulders at the end of the day is a different kind of pain than he has ever known. It is not the sharp, terrifying pain of destruction. It is the deep, satisfying ache of creation. He is preparing a bed. He is making a home for life. When the field is finally turned, the hardened crust broken into soft, breathable loam, the real work begins. Imagine him sitting on the edge of the wooden porch of his home, the evening sun casting long, golden shadows across the courtyard. In his lap rests a small, woven basket. Inside the basket are the seeds. He reaches in and cups a handful of them in his scarred, calloused palm. They are daikon radish seeds, tiny, perfectly round, and a deep, earthy brown. They weigh almost nothing. He stares at them, completely mesmerized. For years, the only small, heavy things he carried in his pockets were pieces of lead and brass, ammunition designed to tear the world apart. Now, he is holding thousands of microscopic, sleeping lives. Each tiny sphere contains a silent, miraculous blueprint for a root, a stem, and a crown of green leaves. He feels a profound, overwhelming sense of responsibility. These seeds do not care about the war. They do not care about the rise and fall of empires. They only care about the dark, the damp, and the sun. And they are entirely dependent on him. The next morning, he walks out into the freshly turned field. The air is heavy and still, promising a gentle afternoon rain. He kneels in the dirt. He takes a single seed between his thumb and forefinger. The contrast is deeply moving, the rough, damaged hands of a former warrior delicately holding a speck of fragile life. With a quiet, tender reverence, he presses the seed into the soft earth. He sweeps a pinch of dark soil over it, burying it in the dark. He moves down the row, planting them one by one. It is a slow, intimate process. With every seed he buries, he is making a silent promise to the future. He is letting go of the man he was required to be, and embracing the man he is choosing to become. He thinks of his comrades who did not return. He imagines writing them a letter, not on paper, but in the soil. I am planting the radishes today, he tells them in his mind. The earth is soft. We are going to feed the children. We are going to make the country green again. I am doing the living for both of us. When the entire field is planted, there is nothing left to do but wait. This, too, is a new kind of courage. In the military, he was taught to seize control, to force an outcome through sheer will and endurance. But here, standing at the edge of the seeded dirt, he is entirely powerless. He cannot command the sea to open. He cannot order the rain to fall or the sun to shine. He must completely surrender to the slow, mysterious rhythm of the natural world. For the first few days, the field remains a flat, brown expanse. He walks out every morning, holding his breath, searching the dirt for a sign, only to find nothing. The old anxiety threatens to creep back in. Has he done it wrong? Is the soil too poisoned by the ash? Are his hands too cursed to grow anything beautiful? But then, one morning, a soft, misty rain washes over the valley. He steps out of the house, pulling a woven straw cape over his shoulders to keep the dampness away. He walks down to the edge of the field. The earth has turned a rich, deep chocolate brown, drinking in the gentle water. He kneels down, his knees sinking into the soft mud. He leans close to the ground, his face inches from the soil. There, pushing stubbornly through a tiny crack in the wet earth, is a speck of color. It is green. It is a green so pale, so vibrant, and so fragile that it looks like it might dissolve if he breathes on it too heavily. It is a tiny, arched stem, hauling 2 microscopic leaves up from the dark, reaching desperately for the gray light of the morning. The man stops breathing. He slowly lowers his face, hovering over the tiny sprout. He looks down the row, and he sees another. And another. A faint, dotted line of impossible, brilliant green stretching across the desolate gray field. The seeds have forgiven the ash. The earth has forgiven his hands. A heavy, suffocating knot that has resided in his chest for years suddenly, quietly unties itself. The tears that fall from his eyes this time are not tears of frustration or grief. They are the warm, quiet tears of a profound, overwhelming relief. They fall from his cheeks and drop into the soil, watering the very life he has just brought into the world. He is no longer a destroyer. He is a farmer. He is a father to the green shoots. Through the slow, rhythmic labor of the seasons, the proud men of a shattered army are slowly rebuilt. They trade the sharp, terrifying crack of the rifle for the dull, comforting thud of the hoe. They learn that true strength is not found in the ability to tear down a city, but in the quiet, agonizing, and beautiful patience required to coax a single stalk of rice from the mud. As the years pass, the calluses on their hands grow thick and permanent, a protective armor earned not in battle, but in the peaceful, everyday heroism of feeding a nation. Imagine the man years later, an elder with a face deeply lined by the sun. He sits on the porch in the evening, watching the fireflies dance over a field that is now lush, tall, and swaying gently in the wind. The scars on his hands are still there, but they are hidden beneath the proud, heavy calluses of his labor. He lifts a cup of warm tea to his lips. He looks out at the green expanse, feeling the deep, abiding rhythm of the earth humming in his blood. The tools of war have rusted away to nothing, swallowed by the soil and forgotten by time. But the plow remains, shining silver in the moonlight, a beautiful, enduring testament to the men who returned from the darkness, bowed down to the earth, and quietly, patiently, learned how to make the world bloom again. While the rest of the world learned to forget, a few solitary men deep in the damp green shadows remembered a war that no longer existed. Imagine a world where the calendar simply ceases to exist. Outside the heavy, emerald embrace of the tropical canopy, the earth has turned thousands of times. Cities of ash have been swept clean, replaced by towering pillars of glass and steel that catch the morning sun. New highways stretch across valleys like ribbons of gray silk. Children who once cried at the sound of sirens have grown old, their hair turning white as they bounce their own grandchildren on their knees. The world has moved forward, rushing into a bright, noisy, and unimaginative future. But here, deep in the trackless heart of the island forest, time has been caught in a snare of twisting vines. It does not move forward. It only moves in slow, patient circles. Beneath the towering mahogany trees and the wide, sheltering leaves of the wild bananas, a man walks in absolute silence. He is a phantom woven from sun and shadow. His uniform, once crisp and sharp, has long since dissolved into memory. In its place, he wears garments meticulously crafted from the forest itself, woven plant fibers, tree bark pounded soft, and scraps of heavy canvas salvaged from forgotten supply drops, stitched together with the tough, fibrous vines of the jungle. He is an older man now. The smooth, determined face of the young soldier who walked into these woods has been deeply carved by the wind, the rain, and the relentless humidity. His skin is tanned to the color of dark, rich wood. Yet, his back is entirely straight. He moves with the fluid, careful grace of a deer, his bare, calloused feet stepping only where the moss is thickest, never snapping a twig, never disturbing a resting leaf. To live in such profound isolation for decades is a testament to an endurance so extraordinary it borders on the sacred. He is not a prisoner of the enemy. He is a prisoner of his own unyielding devotion. Long ago, before the radio batteries died, before the silence fell, he was given a command. He was told to stay. He was told to hold the line, to survive, and to wait for the return of his brothers. And in the heart of this man, an order is not a thing that fades with the turning of the seasons. It is a stone pillar around which he has built his entire universe. He does not know that the empire he serves has laid down its arms. He does not know that the enemies he hides from have become friends. He only knows the promise he made in the dark, and he intends to keep it. Watch him as the morning light filters down through the canopy, painting the damp earth in a mosaic of gold and green. His day is a careful, practiced meditation. Survival here requires an intimacy with the natural world that leaves no room for error. He approaches a fallen coconut, hidden in the ferns. He does not crack it open with frantic hunger. He handles it with a deep, quiet respect. He uses a blade, a piece of rusted steel he has polished against river stones every evening for years until it shines like a mirror, to carefully pierce the dark eye of the shell. He tips his head back and drinks the sweet, clear water, closing his eyes in quiet gratitude. Every drop is precious. Every meal is a tiny, beautiful victory over the vast, indifferent wilderness. His diet is remarkably humble. He knows which curled leaves hide the plumpest insects, gathering them with gentle fingers to roast over a tiny, smokeless fire. He knows the secret language of the wild yams, digging them up with a carved wooden stick, taking only what he needs, and smoothing the soil back over the roots so the forest may continue to grow. He eats slowly, chewing every bitter morsel, thanking the damp earth for allowing him to live one more day. In this endless, green twilight, the forest has become his entire world. It is a harsh jailer, bringing torrential rains that chill him to the bone and fevers that make the trees spin around him in the dark. But it is also his mother, his protector, and his only companion. He has learned to listen to the jungle. He knows the difference between the wind moving through the broad leaves of a breadfruit tree and the wind pushing through the slender stalks of bamboo. He watches the long, busy trails of the forest ants, feeling a strange kinship with their tireless, organized labor. He rescues a struggling moth from a puddle of water, lifting it on the tip of a leaf and placing it on a dry branch. In a life defined by the anticipation of war, these small, private moments of kindness toward the tiny creatures of the forest are his only outlet for the gentle humanity he carries locked inside his chest. There are days when the profound, crushing weight of his loneliness is almost too heavy to bear. On those days, when the rain falls in heavy, gray sheets, turning the jungle into a drumming, watery cave, he retreats to a small shelter hidden beneath an overhang of dark rock. He sits cross-legged on a mat of woven palm fronds. From the deepest pocket of his bark cloth shirt, he pulls out a small, tightly wrapped bundle. He unwraps the layers of oiled cloth with trembling, reverent hands. Inside lies his most precious treasure. It is not a weapon. It is a photograph. The edges are worn soft, and the image is terribly faded by the damp air, but he knows every line by heart. It is the face of his mother, standing before a wooden gate, smiling a soft, eternal smile. He stares at her for hours in the dim light. He tries to remember the sound of her voice calling him in for the evening meal. He tries to remember the smell of the charcoal fire in their home. He whispers to her. He apologizes for being away so long. He promises her, with a voice that has grown rough and cracked from disuse, that he is doing his duty. That he is bringing honor to their name. These whispered, one-sided conversations in the dark are his tether to the world of men. They are the invisible anchors that keep his mind from drifting away entirely into the wild, untamed sea of the jungle. Sometimes, the modern world bleeds into his sanctuary, though he does not understand it. He will be standing on a high ridge, looking out over the endless canopy, when a sound reaches him. It is a high, tearing roar, unlike the low rumble of the bombers he remembers. He looks up into the sliver of blue sky visible between the branches. High above, looking no larger than a silver needle, a passenger jet sails peacefully across the heavens, leaving a long, fluffy white trail in its wake. He watches it intently, narrowing his eyes against the glare. He believes it is a new, miraculous machine of his own country, patrolling the skies, continuing the great struggle. He straightens his posture, clicks his bare heels together softly in the dirt, and offers a slow, deeply respectful bow to the sky. He does not know that the plane is filled with people reading newspapers, drinking warm coffee, and traveling to sandy beaches for holidays. He only knows that the sight of it fills his tired heart with a fierce, burning pride. He is not alone. The fight goes on. As the years quietly blur into decades, his existence becomes less about being a soldier and more about being a monk of the forest. He is a keeper of time, a guardian of a suspended reality. He maintains his weapons, he patrols his perimeter, and he mends his clothes, all with the slow, rhythmic devotion of a religious ritual. He has outlived his own anger. He has outlived his fear. What remains is a pure, distilled essence of endurance. He is a living monument to the breathtaking, terrifying capacity of the human spirit to hold onto a single idea, to wrap the hands around a vow and refuse to let go, even as the world crumbles and rebuilds itself 1,000 times over. When evening falls, the jungle transforms. The harsh, bright heat of the day softens into a thick, velvety darkness. The air fills with the chaotic, pulsating symphony of tree frogs and the steady, vibrating hum of cicadas. The man climbs into his shelter. He rests his head on a bundle of dried moss. He feels the aches in his aging joints, the heavy toll of thousands of days spent sleeping on the damp earth. Yet, as he looks out into the pitch-black forest, watching the tiny, pale green lights of the fireflies drifting between the massive trunks, he feels a strange, profound peace. He does not know what tomorrow will bring. He does not know if the order to return will ever come. But he knows that he has survived today. He knows that his blade is sharp, his water gourd is full, and his mother's face is safely tucked against his heart. He closes his eyes, letting the rhythmic sounds of the forest wash over him. He breathes in the scent of the wet soil and the blooming night orchids. He is a stranger to the new world, a ghost haunting a forgotten island, but in the quiet sanctuary of his own heart, he is exactly where he is supposed to be. And as he drifts into a light, watchful sleep, cradled in the vast, green hands of the jungle, he remains, beautifully and tragically, perfectly suspended in time. There is a profound, quiet mercy in the way time slowly turns the sharpest stones into smooth, polished glass. Imagine a quiet morning in a house that has known decades of peace. The sun has not yet crested the horizon, but the sky is beginning to lighten, turning from a deep, velvety indigo to a soft, bruised lilac. The world is perfectly still. The frantic, noisy energy of the rebuilding years, the hammering, the shouting, the endless rushing to catch trains and build a new nation, has settled into a comfortable, steady hum. In this hushed, pre-dawn light, an elderly man stands quietly before a small bathroom mirror. He is wearing a soft, worn cotton robe, tied loosely at his waist. He turns the handle of the faucet, and the warm water flows with a gentle, rushing sound, splashing softly against the white porcelain. He cups the water in his hands, bringing it up to wash his face. It is a simple, everyday ritual, one he has performed tens of thousands of times. But today, as he reaches for a small, white cotton towel to dry his skin, he pauses. He lowers the towel, and he looks, truly looks, into the glass. For many years after he returned from the distant shores, he avoided mirrors. In the immediate aftermath of the silence, the face that looked back at him was the face of a stranger. It was a face hollowed by hunger, haunted by a survivor's guilt so heavy it threatened to pull him beneath the earth. Back then, to look into his own eyes was to invite the ghosts of the jungle into his quiet room. It was to see the faces of the boys who did not return, superimposed over his own. But time, like a gentle, relentless river, has continued to flow. The man in the mirror now has hair the color of winter frost. His skin is deeply lined, carrying the intricate, beautiful maps of a long life lived in the sun. There are creases around his eyes, carved not by the terror of falling fire, but by decades of smiling at his children, of squinting against the bright summer glare while tending his garden, of laughing with his wife over a shared cup of roasted tea. He raises a trembling, age-spotted hand and gently touches his own cheek. The skin is soft, fragile as ancient paper. As he stares into his own dark eyes, the decades suddenly telescope, folding in on themselves. Beneath the silver hair, beneath the wrinkles and the soft folds of age, he sees him. He sees the boy he used to be. He sees the terrified, proud, impossibly young recruit who was handed a uniform that was too large and a rifle that was too heavy. He sees the boy who boarded a transport ship with a tightly folded flag in his pocket, believing he was walking out to hold up the sky. He sees the young man who hid in the damp green shadows, who shivered in the freezing taiga, who read worn, fragile letters in the dark, praying silently for a mother he thought he would never see again. For half a lifetime, the old man has carried a quiet, secret anger toward that boy. He blamed the boy for the things he had to do to survive. He blamed the boy for living when better men had fallen. He held that boy in a rigid, unforgiving grip, locking him away in the darkest room of his heart, refusing to offer him comfort or absolution. But now, standing in the gentle morning light, the armor finally cracks. The old man looks at the boy in the glass, and he does not feel anger. He does not feel shame. He feels an overwhelming, crushing wave of tenderness. He realizes, with a breath that catches softly in his throat, that the boy was not a monster. He was not a coward. He was just a child, caught in a terrible, churning storm that he did not create and could not control. He was a boy who simply wanted to go home, who wanted to eat warm rice, who wanted to listen to the rain on a cedar roof without fear. The old man's chest rises and falls. And then, in the absolute quiet of the washroom, he begins to cry. It is not the desperate, racking sobbing of fresh grief. It is a slow, quiet, profoundly beautiful release. The tears brim in his eyes and spill over his withered lashes, tracing the deep lines of his face. They are warm, and they are heavy. They carry the accumulated ash of 50 years. With every tear that falls into the porcelain sink, a tiny, jagged piece of the past is washed away. He is crying for the youth that was stolen from him. He is crying for the innocence that was left behind in the mud. But most of all, he is crying because he is finally, truly, giving himself permission to be forgiven. This is the quietest, most extraordinary heroism of all. It takes immense bravery to survive a war, but it takes a magnificent, everyday courage to survive the peace, to look at the broken pieces of your own soul and gently, patiently, love them back together. As he wipes his eyes with the soft towel, he feels a lightness in his bones that he has not felt since he was a child. The mirror is no longer an enemy. It is just glass. And the face looking back at him is just the face of a grandfather who has earned his rest. This profound thawing of the heart does not only happen in the waking hours. It reaches down into the deepest, most hidden corners of the night. For decades, the night was a battlefield. The veterans would lie in their comfortable futons, their bodies safe in the quiet suburbs, but their minds were trapped on distant islands. The nightmares were vivid, terrifying things, the sudden, deafening crack of thunder, the smell of burning oil, the desperate, frantic searching for a place to hide. They would wake up with their hearts hammering against their ribs, their sheets soaked in a cold sweat, reaching out in the dark for a weapon that was no longer there. But as the years turn into decades, the nightmares slowly begin to lose their grip. Imagine an old soldier asleep in his room. The moonlight streams through the window, painting a silver square across the woven floor mats. He is dreaming, but the dream has changed. He is back in the jungle, yes. The canopy is thick and green above him. But it is not menacing. The oppressive, suffocating heat is gone, replaced by a cool, gentle breeze. There are no sounds of distant sirens. There is only the soft, rhythmic chirping of the forest insects and the distant murmur of a clear stream. He is walking down a narrow path, and someone is walking beside him. It is his old comrade, the friend who shared his meager rations, the friend who did not make it to the white ships. But in the dream, his friend is not wounded. He is not frightened. He is young, his uniform is clean, and his face is bright and at peace. His friend turns to him. He does not ask why he was left behind. He does not ask for vengeance or sorrow. Instead, he reaches into his pocket and pulls out a small, folded square of paper. It is a letter from home, the very letter the old man used to read to him in the dark. His friend hands him the letter, smiles a warm, radiant smile, and gently touches his shoulder. "It is okay," the touch says. "The watch is over. You do not have to carry my pack anymore. Go to sleep." The old soldier takes a deep, long breath in his sleep. The tension that has lived in his jaw for 50 years finally, completely relaxes. His hands, which used to curl into defensive fists beneath the blankets, slowly open, his fingers resting softly against the cotton quilt. The terrifying shadows of the past are receding, replaced by the gentle, forgiving passage of time. The ghosts are no longer haunting him, they are comforting him. They have become guardian spirits, watching over his peaceful twilight. When morning comes, he wakes up. He does not startle. He does not check the corners of the room. He simply opens his eyes and listens. He hears the comforting, ordinary sounds of a world that is safe. The distant, rhythmic sweep of a bamboo broom on the pavement outside. The soft, cheerful voice of a television announcer from the neighbor's house. The slide of a paper door in his own hallway, and the light, quick footsteps of his granddaughter running toward the kitchen. He sits up slowly, feeling the familiar, dull ache in his knees, a reminder of his long journey, but also a reminder that he is alive to feel it. He dresses in soft, comfortable clothes. He walks out into the main room of the house. His wife is there, her own hair white as spun sugar. She is kneeling by the low table, pouring hot water into the small clay teapot. The smell of the green tea rises in the air, earthy, warm, and infinitely soothing. She looks up at him and smiles. It is a smile of deep, unspoken understanding. She has walked this long, quiet road with him. She has held his hand through the darkest nights, weathering the storms of his silent grief, waiting patiently for the ice to melt. He sits down across from her. He takes the small, warm teacup in his hands. He looks out the open window, into the small garden they planted together so many years ago. The garden is beautiful. The cherry tree they planted as a tiny sapling when they returned to the ashes is now thick and strong, its branches heavy with the lush, green leaves of late summer. A small stone basin sits in the corner, holding clear water where tiny birds come to drink. It is a miniature world of perfect, enduring peace. He takes a sip of the tea. It tastes like the earth, like the sun, like home. The heavy, suffocating mantle of the soldier has finally slipped completely from his shoulders. He is no longer defined by the war. He is defined by this cup of tea. He is defined by the sound of his granddaughter's laughter. He is defined by the soft, morning light warming the floorboards. He closes his eyes and takes a long, slow breath, filling his lungs with the sweet, clean air. The boys they once were have finally been laid to rest, mourned, forgiven, and set free. The long, dark night has ended. And in the gentle, forgiving embrace of their twilight years, the old men of a quiet nation are finally, truly, allowed to simply be. The quietest miracles do not announce themselves with a shout, but with the gentle, settling weight of a falling autumn leaf. Imagine a world that has finally, truly slowed down. The urgent, frantic drumbeat of survival, the desperate need to rebuild the ash-covered cities, the tireless days spent breaking the hardened soil, the heavy, silent lifting of a broken nation, has gradually softened into a steady, comforting rhythm. The long summer of their labor is over. The air has turned crisp and cool, carrying the sweet, earthy scent of wood smoke and drying rice stalks. For the men who walked out of the deep jungles and the freezing forests so many decades ago, a profound and beautiful transformation has taken place. They have entered the autumn of their lives. When they were young, huddled in the dark with their rusted rifles and their tightly folded letters, the very concept of old age was an impossible dream. It was a fairy tale, something that belonged to other people in other times. They had fully expected their lives to be brief, brilliant, and violently extinguished. They were taught that they were cherry blossoms, destined to fall in the first strong wind of spring. But the wind had passed, and they had not fallen. They had survived. And now, they look at their own hands and marvel at the impossible gift of time. The skin on the back of their hands is thin now, translucent as rice paper, speckled with the pale brown marks of the sun. Their knuckles are swollen from years of hard, honest work. They walk with a slow, deliberate shuffle, their knees aching when the winter dampness creeps into the floorboards. To anyone walking past them on the street, they are just elderly men. They are frail, soft-spoken grandfathers in thick woolen sweaters, moving carefully down the aisles of the grocery store or sitting quietly on wooden park benches feeding crumbs to the pigeons. But within the quiet sanctuaries of their own minds, every single day is a breathtaking revelation. They are experiencing the profound, quiet gratitude of simply being allowed to grow old. Healing from a shattered world does not usually come in a sudden, blinding flash of enlightenment. It does not arrive with a parade or a medal. Healing is a weaver, sitting quietly in the corner of the room, working an old wooden loom. For years, the threads of their lives were dark, coarse, and heavy, stained with the mud of foreign islands and the gray ash of ruined homes. But slowly, day by day, year by year, the weaver began to introduce a new thread. It was a thread spun from the ordinary magic of everyday life. It was light, and it was golden. Watch the old man as he wakes up in the morning. The house is completely silent, save for the gentle ticking of a clock in the hallway. He does not wake with a start. He does not reach for a helmet in the dark. He simply opens his eyes, watches the dust motes dancing in the pale morning sunlight, and smiles. He shuffles into the kitchen. He fills a heavy iron kettle with cold, clear water and sets it on the stove. He listens to the comforting, rising hiss as the water begins to boil. He takes down a small, ceramic teapot and a simple green teacup. He measures the loose tea leaves. He does not rush. He pours the hot water, watching the dried, curled leaves slowly unfold and expand in the steaming water, releasing their rich, grassy aroma. When he pours the tea into his cup, he holds it in both hands. The warmth of the ceramic seeps deep into his cold, aching joints. He brings the cup to his lips and takes a slow, careful sip. In this tiny, mundane action, there is a universe of healing. He remembers a time when a single drop of muddy water was worth more than gold. He remembers the agonizing, consuming thirst of the tropical canopy, where men wept for a taste of the rain. Now, he has an entire kettle of pure, clean water. He has the luxury of letting it warm his hands. He has the freedom to sit in a soft chair by the window and simply watch the steam curl into the air, vanishing into the sunlight. Every sip of the warm green tea is a silent, profound celebration of peace. It is the golden thread being woven into the fabric of his day. Outside his window, the seasons are turning. He steps out onto the narrow wooden veranda that overlooks his small, enclosed garden. In the center of the garden stands a Japanese maple tree. Its leaves have turned a brilliant, fiery crimson, with edges of burnt orange and deep gold. As a gentle breeze sweeps through the courtyard, a few of the leaves break free from the branches. They drift down through the crisp air, turning slowly, gracefully, before coming to rest on the mossy ground. When he was a soldier, the falling leaf was a symbol of tragic, premature death. It was the heavy metaphor forced upon his generation, the demand that they drop from the branch. Before their time, sacrificing their youth for the earth below. But as he stands on the veranda now, resting his hand against the smooth wooden railing, he reclaims the falling leaf. He watches the crimson shape settle onto the moss, and he realizes there is no tragedy here. The leaves are not falling because they are broken. They are falling because their work is done. They have spent the long, bright summer soaking in the sun, providing shade, giving life to the tree. Now, the tree is going to sleep. The leaves are simply letting go, returning to the soil to rest. It is a peaceful, beautiful surrender. He feels a deep kinship with the maple tree. He, too, has weathered the blazing summers and the fierce storms. He has done his work. He has rebuilt his home, raised his children, and carried the heavy memories of his brothers so they would not be forgotten. And now, in the autumn of his life, he is finally learning how to let go. He sweeps the fallen leaves with a gentle bamboo rake, the soft, rhythmic scratching sound a lullaby for the sleeping earth. Later in the afternoon, the paper door slides open with a sudden, joyful clatter. The quiet stillness of the house is beautifully shattered by the sound of running footsteps. A small child, his granddaughter, rushes into the room. She is wearing a bright yellow sweater, her cheeks flushed pink from playing in the crisp autumn air. She holds a slightly crumpled drawing in her hand, thrusting it upward for him to see. The old man kneels on the woven tatami mat. His joints protest softly, but he ignores them. He reaches out and takes the paper. It is a chaotic, vibrant scribble of crayons, a picture of a house, a disproportionately large dog, and a brilliant, smiling sun. He praises the drawing in a low, gentle whisper, his eyes crinkling at the corners. The little girl beams. Without a moment's hesitation, she steps forward and grabs his hand. This is the moment where the healing is absolute. He looks down at their joined hands. His own hand is massive, scarred, and rough as old tree bark. It is a hand that once held a weapon. It is a hand that dug through the ash of a ruined city. It is a hand that carries the invisible stains of a terrible history. But the little girl's hand is incredibly small. It is soft, perfectly smooth, and completely untouched by the sorrows of the world. Her fingers wrap confidently around his calloused thumb. She does not feel the scars. She does not see the ghosts. To her, this massive, weathered hand is simply the safest place in the entire world. It is the hand that gives her sweet rice candies and helps her balance on the stepping stones in the garden. As he holds her tiny hand, a wave of pure, overwhelming emotion washes through his chest. It is a feeling so large, so bright, that it leaves him breathless. He looks at her bright, innocent eyes. This child has never heard the terrifying wail of an air raid siren cutting through the night. She has never had to hide in a dark trench, trembling as the earth shook around her. She has never known the biting, hollow ache of starvation, or the desperate fear of a letter arriving with black borders. She knows only peace. She knows only a world where the sky is meant for kites and the sun, and where grandfathers are always waiting in warm, quiet rooms. The old man realizes, with a profound and beautiful clarity, that his suffering was not in vain. The heavy, agonizing burden his generation carried, the terrifying years they spent in the shadows, the silence they endured, it all bought the ticket for this little girl to live in the light. His nightmares paid for her dreams. He gently squeezes her small hand, fighting back a tear of sheer gratitude. He would walk through the freezing taiga 100 times over. He would endure the thirst of the jungle for 1,000 years. He would carry the weight of the whole broken world on his shoulders, just to ensure that this tiny, perfect hand never had to hold a rifle. He is no longer a soldier. He is a shield that has been retired, resting quietly against the wall, watching the beautiful life it was forged to protect. As the day turns to evening, the granddaughter falls asleep on a cushion in the corner of the room, exhausted by her own joy. The old man covers her with a thick, quilted blanket, tucking the edges softly around her small shoulders. He listens to her steady, rhythmic breathing. He sits back at his low wooden table. He opens a small drawer and takes out a pen and a clean piece of white paper. There was a time when paper was the most precious commodity on earth. He used to write desperate, tightly folded letters in the snow, praying they would somehow cross the ocean. Every word was heavy with the fear of death, rationing the ink as if it were his own blood. But tonight, he clicks the pen with a soft, ordinary sound. He is not writing a final goodbye. He is writing a grocery list for tomorrow. Sweet potatoes, he writes, his handwriting slow and careful. Milk. A new box of crayons. The ink flows easily. The words are wonderfully, beautifully mundane. There is no urgency. There is only the quiet promise of tomorrow. He places the pen down. He looks around his home. The shadows are long and gentle. The air is warm. The weaver has finished her work for the day, and the fabric of his life is whole again. It is not the pristine, unblemished silk of his youth. It is a thick, complex tapestry, woven with dark threads of sorrow and brilliant, golden threads of survival, love, and ordinary grace. Growing old is a privilege denied to so many of the boys he once knew. He carries their memory with him, but it is no longer a heavy stone. It is a quiet companion. He lives his peaceful days for them, drinking the warm tea they could not drink, watching the autumn leaves they could not see, and loving the children they could never have. The night settles softly over the house, wrapping it in a deep, protective embrace. The old man closes his eyes. He listens to the wind in the maple tree. He feels the lingering warmth of the teacup on his palms. He is safe. He is home. And as he drifts into a gentle, dreamless sleep, he rests in the profound, beautiful quiet of a life that has finally, truly, been healed. To find true peace, a man must sometimes walk slowly, with a walking stick and a quiet heart, back into the very center of his deepest sorrow. Imagine the soft, rhythmic hum of a passenger plane, soaring high above a vast, endless expanse of shimmering turquoise ocean. The cabin is cool and quiet. Passengers are sleeping, reading, or watching the clouds drift by like spun sugar. But near the window sits an elderly man who is entirely still. He is dressed in a neat, simple white shirt and a dark suit jacket that hangs a little loosely on his fragile frame. His silver hair is combed neatly, and his hands, resting in his lap, are folded tightly over a string of smooth wooden prayer beads. He is looking down at the water, his eyes tracing the shadows of the coral reefs far below. Decades ago, he crossed this exact same ocean. He was just a boy then, packed into the stifling, dark hold of a transport ship, surrounded by the terrifying sounds of war, gripping a heavy rifle with trembling, sweat-slicked hands. He went to the islands as a soldier, wrapped in the heavy, unyielding armor of an empire, sent to conquer and to hold the line in the deep green jungles. Today, he returns. But he returns as a completely different man. He carries no iron. He carries no anger. He carries only a small canvas bag containing a bundle of sandalwood incense, a box of matches, 1,000 tiny paper cranes folded by his grandchildren, and a profound, aching need to apologize. He is making a pilgrimage. He is one of the keepers of memory, traveling back to the tropical shores where his youth was buried, seeking a final, quiet absolution from the land, the fallen, and the people he once called enemies. When the plane touches down, and he finally steps out onto the tarmac, the heat hits him like a sudden, heavy blanket. It is the exact same heat he remembers, thick, humid, smelling of damp earth, salt spray, and crushed orchids. For a fleeting second, his heart flutters against his ribs, a phantom echo of an old terror. But he closes his eyes, takes a slow, deep breath, and lets the feeling pass. There are no sirens here. There is only the gentle sound of the wind moving through the palm fronds. The island has healed. That is the first, breathtaking realization that washes over him. When he left this place, it was a landscape of shattered palm trees, scorched earth, and deep, ragged craters. The hills were stripped bare, weeping gray mud into the sea. But the earth is infinitely forgiving. Over the decades, the jungle has crept back, patient and relentless. Lush, brilliant green vines have swallowed the rusted shells of tanks. Bright pink hibiscus flowers bloom in the indentations of old trenches. The terrible scars of his youth have been covered by a soft, beautiful blanket of living green. The land has moved on, burying the iron under a tapestry of roots and leaves. He hires a small car to take him away from the modern town, driving up into the dense, quiet hills. The road turns to gravel, and then to dirt, winding its way through the dense canopy. Finally, the car stops. The driver, a young local man who knows the history of these hills, nods respectfully and stays by the vehicle, allowing the old man to walk the final distance alone. He relies heavily on his wooden cane, his slow, shuffling footsteps crunching softly on the dry leaves. The climb is agonizing for his old joints. His breath comes in shallow, rasping sighs. But he does not stop. He must reach the top of the ridge. He must see the ocean from the place where he last saw his friends. When he finally clears the tree line, he steps out onto a high, grassy cliff. The view is magnificent. The Pacific Ocean stretches out before him, a brilliant, blinding blue, glittering under the afternoon sun. The sea breeze is cool and sweet, rushing up the cliff face to dry the perspiration on his forehead. He walks to the very edge of the ridge. Here, hidden in the tall grass, is the entrance to a small, dark cave. He carefully lowers himself to his knees. The damp earth seeps through his trousers, but he does not mind. He opens his small canvas bag. With trembling fingers, he pulls out a small, glass bottle. Before he left his hometown in Japan, he walked down to the clear, shallow river where he used to play as a child, the very river his fallen comrades used to dream of when their canteens ran dry. He filled the bottle to the brim. He unscrews the cap. He reaches out and gently, slowly, pours the clear water onto the dark soil at the entrance of the cave. "I have brought the river to you," he whispers, his voice cracking, soft as the rustling grass. "Drink. Drink as much as you want. You do not have to be thirsty anymore." He watches the earth drink the water, turning the dust into a rich, dark mud. He then takes out the bundle of incense. He strikes a match, shielding the tiny, flickering yellow flame from the ocean breeze with his cupped hand. He lights the sticks, shaking them gently until they glow with a soft, red heat. He presses them firmly into the soil. The fragrant, earthy smoke of the sandalwood rises, a thin, delicate gray ribbon dancing in the wind. It is a bridge between the world of the living and the world of the ghosts. He bows his head, pressing his hands together so tightly his knuckles turn white. And in the profound silence of the ridge, he begins his apologies. He apologizes to the land. He asks forgiveness from the soil for tearing it open, from the trees for burning their branches, from the quiet beaches for turning their white sands red. He weeps for the sheer arrogance of bringing such terrible noise to such a beautiful, peaceful place. He apologizes to his comrades. He asks their forgiveness for growing old. He asks their forgiveness for the times he laughed with his children, for the times he tasted sweet rice, for the times he slept warmly in a soft bed while they remained here in the dark. He lays the chains of paper cranes, brilliant reds, blues, and golds, at the mouth of the cave, a gift from a new generation that knows only peace. But his heaviest, most agonizing apology is reserved for the people of the island. He remembers the terrified faces of the families who hid in the forests, the people whose homes were reduced to ash, whose peaceful lives were shattered by a war they did not ask for. He carries the guilt of an uninvited guest who brought nothing but sorrow to his hosts. He bows until his forehead touches the grass, his shoulders shaking with the weight of a silent, tearful prayer, begging the invisible spirits of the island to forgive the blind, foolish boy he once was. As he kneels there, weeping into the earth, he hears a soft rustling behind him. He does not startle. He slowly lifts his head and wipes his wet cheeks with the back of his hand. He turns around. Standing a few feet away is an elderly woman. She is a local islander, dressed in a brightly patterned cotton dress, a woven sun hat resting on her silver hair. Her face is deeply lined, carrying her own map of the years. She must have walked up the path from the village below. The old soldier freezes. A sudden, cold spike of shame pierces his heart. He is an intruder once again. He is a living reminder of the terrible days. He drops his gaze to the grass, unable to look her in the eye, preparing himself for the anger he feels he so deeply deserves. But there is no anger. The woman does not shout. She does not turn away. She walks slowly toward him, her own steps measured and careful. She stops right beside the small, smoking bundle of incense. She looks down at the old man. She sees his tears. She sees his white hair, his trembling hands, and the profound, crushing sorrow radiating from his fragile body. She knows exactly who he is, and she knows exactly why he is crying. She survived the fire too. She reaches into the woven basket on her arm. From it, she pulls a single, brilliant white plumeria blossom. It is fresh, its petals soft and velvet, radiating a sweet, intoxicating perfume. With a slow, graceful movement, she bends down and places the white flower directly next to the burning incense and the brightly colored paper cranes. She stands back up. She looks at the old soldier, who is staring at the flower in absolute disbelief. Their eyes meet. They share no language. They have no words to bridge the vast, terrible chasm of history that separates them. But in the quiet, golden light of the afternoon, beneath the vast blue sky, words are entirely unnecessary. She offers him a slow, gentle nod. It is a nod that acknowledges the pain. It acknowledges the loss. And, most miraculously, it offers a quiet, breathtaking grace. The past is the past, her eyes seem to say. We are only old people now. The war is over. You may rest. She turns and walks slowly back down the path, disappearing into the green shadows of the trees, leaving him alone with the ocean and the smoke. The old man stares at the white flower resting against the dark earth. The heavy, suffocating stone that has resided in the center of his chest for more than half a century, a stone made of guilt, shame, and unending sorrow, suddenly fractures. It breaks into a million tiny pieces, dissolving completely into the tropical air. He places his hands on the ground and weeps. But this time, they are not the bitter tears of a haunted man. They are the warm, rushing, purifying tears of a man who has just been set free. The forgiveness he sought so desperately from the universe was just handed to him in the form of a simple, fragrant blossom. He stays on the ridge until the sun begins to set, painting the ocean in spectacular shades of bruised purple, burning orange, and soft rose. The incense burns down to a fine, gray ash, mixing with the soil. He finally pushes himself up, leaning heavily on his wooden cane. His knees ache, and his back is stiff, but as he turns away from the cave and begins the long walk back to the waiting car, he feels impossibly light. The gravity of the past no longer holds him down. When he boards the plane to return to his homeland, he takes his seat by the window once more. The engines roar to life, and the aircraft lifts off into the sky, banking over the ocean. He looks down at the island one last time. It is no longer a graveyard. It is no longer a monument to his failure or his grief. It is simply a beautiful, green jewel set in a sea of endless blue. The ghosts are no longer calling to him from the dark. They have been given their water. They have heard his apologies. They are finally, truly asleep. The old man leans his head back against the seat. He closes his eyes, a soft, peaceful smile gracing his withered lips. The long journey is over. The apologies have been made. And as the plane carries him through the clouds, back to his family, his garden, and his quiet, peaceful life, he is nothing more than a grandfather, flying home, held safe in the ordinary, beautiful magic of a world that has finally learned how to forgive. The loudest echoes of history are often carried in the softest, most fragile voices. Imagine a bright, spacious classroom on a mild Tuesday morning. The large glass windows are pushed open just a few inches, allowing a gentle, meandering breeze to slip inside. This breeze carries the innocent, everyday sounds of a world entirely at peace, the rhythmic thud of a rubber ball bouncing on a playground, the distant, musical chime of a bicycle bell, and the soft rustle of green leaves dancing on the cherry trees outside. The sunlight pours into the room, falling in warm, golden squares across the polished wooden desks. Sitting at these desks is a generation of youth that has never known the shadows. They have smooth, unblemished faces and bright, curious eyes. To them, the sky is simply a vast, blue canvas meant for clouds, kites, and passenger planes carrying people to sandy beaches. They have never heard the terrifying, rising wail of an air raid siren tearing through the midnight silence. They have never been taught to fear the dark, nor have they ever had to ration their laughter or hide their dreams in underground shelters. They live in a luminous, colorful, and wildly fast-paced world, completely insulated by the decades of quiet that precede them. Into this bright, sunlit sanctuary walks an old man. He moves with a delicate, agonizing slowness. His body is a fragile architecture of thin bones and stooped shoulders, leaning heavily on a wooden cane polished smooth by years of touch. He wears an oversized, dark woolen suit that smells faintly of mothballs, old cedar, and the deep, inescapable scent of time. His hair is completely white, sparse and fine as spun glass. As he makes his slow journey to the front of the room, the children fall completely silent. It is not a silence of fear, but a profound, instinctive reverence. The fast, noisy world they inhabit suddenly hits a beautiful, unseen break. They watch him navigate the space between the desks, realizing without needing to be told that they are looking at a living bridge, a man who has walked all the way from a dark and unimaginable past just to stand in their sunlight. The old man reaches the front of the room. He does not stand behind the heavy wooden podium. It feels too formal, too much like the rigid, unyielding structures of the world he left behind. Instead, he takes a slow, careful seat on a simple folding chair. He rests his two withered hands on the curved handle of his cane. He looks out at the sea of young faces. For a long, suspended moment, he does not speak. He is looking at the very thing he sacrificed his youth to buy. He is looking at safety. He sees children who have eaten warm, soft rice for breakfast. He sees children whose biggest worries are mathematics tests and afternoon sports. The sheer, overwhelming beauty of their innocence washes over him, and a soft, trembling smile touches the corners of his mouth. Then, he begins to speak. His voice is not the booming, commanding roar of a soldier. It is a cracked, gentle whisper. It sounds like dry autumn leaves brushing against a window pane, or the soft, rhythmic sweeping of a bamboo broom on a temple path. It is a voice that requires the children to lean forward, to hold their breath, to listen with their entire hearts. He does not tell them stories of grand strategies, moving armies, or the terrifying noise of the battlefields. Those things are heavy, cold, and made of iron. He does not want to burden these children with iron. Instead, he speaks to them of the fragile, human things. He tells them about a night in a jungle so thick and dark it felt like the bottom of the ocean. He describes the heavy, suffocating air and the fear that tasted like cold copper in his mouth. But then, he tells them how he looked up through a tiny break in the canopy and saw a single, brilliant star. I looked at that star, the old man whispers, his eyes crinkling as he looks around the classroom, and I suddenly realized that my mother, sitting on the wooden porch of our home thousands of miles away, was looking at the exact same star. For that 1 minute, the war vanished. There was no jungle. There was no ocean. There was only me and my mother, connected by a tiny point of silver light. The children sit perfectly still. The modern world outside the window fades away. They are right there with him, in the dark, holding onto that thread of starlight. He tells them about the freezing winters of the deep north, where the snow was so deep it swallowed the trees. He tells them how the cold was an invisible thief, trying to steal the very breath from their lungs. But he does not speak of hatred for his captors. Instead, he speaks of a friend named Kenji, a boy no older than the students sitting in the front row. Kenji had a small piece of brown sugar candy, the grandfather murmurs, his thumb slowly rubbing the wood of his cane. He had saved it for 2 years. It was the only sweet thing he possessed in the entire world. And one night, when I was shaking with a fever that made my teeth rattle, Kenji broke that tiny piece of sugar in half, and he placed it on my tongue. A few of the students unconsciously bring their hands to their mouths. That sugar, the old man says, a single tear pooling in the deep creases beneath his eye, tasted like a miracle. It tasted like life. It was a piece of kindness so immense, so heavy, that it anchored me to the earth. Kenji did not survive the winter. But that piece of sugar, that gentle, beautiful act of sharing, it has kept me warm for 60 years. He is giving them the ultimate gift of his generation. He is taking the most agonizing, terrifying experiences of his life and distilling them down into lessons of pure, radiant humanity. He is showing them that even in the absolute darkest, coldest corners of the human experience, love and kindness stubbornly refuse to die. The physical toll of bringing these memories back into the light is visible. The old man's hands tremble slightly more than before. He pauses, closing his eyes, his chest rising and falling in a shallow, tired breath. In the third row, a young girl with pigtails stands up. She moves quietly to the front of the room. She does not say a word. She simply holds out a small, clean box of tissues, offering it to him with both hands extended, bowing her head deeply. The grandfather opens his eyes. He looks at the small, soft hands offering him comfort. He takes a tissue, his fingers gently brushing against hers. "Thank you, little one," he whispers. It is a minuscule interaction, taking no more than a few seconds. But within it lies the entire, beautiful arc of their history. The generation that suffered the unimaginable is being gently tended to by the generation that knows only peace. The circle is closing. The wounds are being bound by the very hands they fought to protect. The old man wipes his eyes, takes a slow sip of water from a paper cup on the desk, and leans forward again. The energy in the room shifts. The storytelling is over, it is time for the plea. "We are fading away," he tells them, his voice gaining a sudden, urgent clarity. It is the tone of a grandfather pleading with his beloved family. Very soon, there will be no one left to tell you what the darkness feels like. You will only have books, and books cannot shiver. Books cannot weep. He looks deeply into the eyes of the students, moving his gaze from desk to desk, ensuring that every single child feels the weight of his words. "We broke the world," he says softly, carrying the collective guilt and sorrow of millions. "We let the fires burn. And we have spent the rest of our lives carrying the ashes, sweeping the floors, and planting the seeds so that you could sit in this room, in the sunlight, and learn about mathematics and poetry." He raises a trembling hand and points gently toward the open window, toward the bright blue sky and the green leaves rustling in the wind. "Please," he whispers, his voice thick with a desperate, beautiful love. "Do not let the sky turn dark again. Do not let the sirens sing. When you grow up, when you become the leaders and the builders of this world, remember the taste of the sugar in the snow. Remember the star through the canopy. Protect the quiet. Guard the peace with everything you have. Make our pain the very last pain. There is not a dry eye in the classroom. The teacher standing at the back of the room is silently wiping her face. The students are frozen, captivated by the profound, tragic, and magnificent weight of his request. He does not ask for their pity. He does not ask for them to carry his sorrow. He only asks them to be the guardians of the beautiful, boring, ordinary peace that surrounds them. The bell rings, a soft, musical chime echoing down the hallway. The hour has passed. The old man slowly pushes himself up from the folding chair, leaning heavily on his cane. The students rise as one. They do not rush for the door. They stand at their desks, and together, they bow. It is a deep, lingering bow of profound gratitude and unspoken promise. The grandfather bows back, a shallow, stiff dip of his shoulders. He turns and begins the long, slow walk back down the aisle, stepping back out into the sunlit hallway, his footsteps fading into the distance. Later that evening, in a small, quiet house in the suburbs, the same old man sits in his living room. The television is murmuring softly in the corner, playing a variety show full of bright colors and laughing people. Sitting on the woven floor mat beside him is his own grandson, a boy of about 6 years old. The boy is entirely absorbed in a picture book about trains, his brow furrowed in deep concentration, his small feet kicking the air behind him. The grandfather watches him. He watches the way the soft lamplight catches the boy's dark hair. He watches the easy, relaxed curve of the child's back. There is no fear in this room. There is no hunger. There is only the gentle, rhythmic hum of a refrigerator in the kitchen and the smell of dinner cooking on the stove. The old man reaches out and gently rests his large, calloused hand on the top of the boy's head. The boy doesn't look up, just leans into the touch, accepting the warmth as a natural, permanent fixture of his universe. The grandfather looks out the sliding glass door to the small garden outside. The sun has set, and the sky is a deep, velvety indigo. The stars are beginning to prick through the darkness, bright and clear and silent. He thinks of the classroom. He thinks of the promise he saw in those young, luminous eyes. He feels a deep, settling exhaustion spread through his bones, but it is a good exhaustion. It is the feeling of a heavy burden finally being set down on the ground. He has passed the lantern. He has told the stories. He has built the bridge. The world will belong to the children now. They will make their own mistakes, they will face their own challenges, but they will do it in the light. They will do it with the protective, invisible armor woven from the suffering and the profound love of the grandfathers who came before them. The old man closes his eyes, his hand still resting softly on his grandson's hair. The night is cool and incredibly peaceful. There are no sounds but the rustling of the wind and the turning of a page in a book. And in this perfect, ordinary quiet, the grandfather finally allows his weary heart to rest, trusting that the forever quiet future he prayed for has, at long last, truly begun. Every long and weary journey must eventually find its way to the quiet edge of evening. Imagine the sky turning a deep, bruised shade of violet, the very last embers of the sun sinking slowly beneath the silhouette of the western mountains. The world is putting itself to sleep. The frantic, bright energy of the day is dissolving into a soft, velvety dusk, bringing with it the cool, sweet scent of evening dew on the cedar trees and the gentle, rhythmic hum of the autumn crickets in the tall grass. In a quiet, softly lit room, an old man is resting. He lies on a thick, comfortable cotton futon, wrapped in a quilt that smells faintly of sunlight and clean linen. The paper doors of his room are open just a fraction, allowing the evening breeze to drift over his face. The house around him is incredibly peaceful. There is the muffled, comforting sound of his daughter washing porcelain dishes in the kitchen, the soft clatter of chopsticks, and the distant, joyful murmur of his grandchildren reading a storybook in the next room. This is the sound of the world he built. And as he lies there, his eyes closed, his breathing slow and shallow, he is finally allowing himself to let it all go. He is one of the very last. The great, vast generation of men who walked out of the deep green jungles, who shivered in the freezing forests of the north, and who sailed home on the white ships, is quietly fading away. Like the brilliant, fiery leaves of the Japanese maple tree in late autumn, they have held onto the branch for as long as they possibly could. They have weathered the storms, they have provided the shade, and now, the time has come for them to simply detach and drift softly toward the earth. Look at his hands, resting gently on top of the quilt. They are frail now, the skin translucent and delicate as ancient rice paper, speckled with the pale brown marks of a long life lived beneath the open sky. But if you look closely, you can still read the history of a nation in the deep, smooth lines of his palms. These are the hands that were once forced to hold the heavy, cold steel of a rifle in the terrifying dark. These are the hands that surrendered that steel, opening with a profound, secret relief under a blazing August sun. These are the hands that sifted through the soft, gray ashes of his childhood home, searching for a single shard of a broken teacup. These are the hands that gripped the rough wooden handle of a hoe, swinging it into the hardened clay until the blisters broke and bled, stubbornly forcing the ruined earth to bloom again. And these are the hands that, years later, learned the delicate magic of folding a tiny paper crane, of pouring a warm cup of green tea, and of holding the incredibly small, perfect fingers of a newborn child. His hands have done enough. They have transformed a landscape of unimaginable sorrow into a country of breathtaking, ordinary peace. They do not need to build anymore. They do not need to hold on tightly. They are allowed, at long last, to rest open and empty. As the twilight deepens in the room, the old man's mind begins to wander. It is not the frantic, terrifying wandering of his old nightmares. The sharp edges of his memories have been worn entirely smooth by the gentle, forgiving passage of time. He is slipping into a waking dream, a beautiful, fluid journey backward through the years. He remembers the feeling of the salty ocean breeze on his face as he stood at the railing of the white ship, staring at the horizon, praying that someone was waiting for him. And then, the memory shifts, melting seamlessly into the profound, crushing relief of seeing his wife standing on the wooden pier, waving a small white handkerchief. He remembers the freezing, biting wind of the taiga, the desperate huddle of men trying to share a single ember of warmth. But the cold does not frighten him anymore, because in his dream, the wind carries the soft, melodic sound of his comrades singing a childhood lullaby in the dark. The song wraps around him like a heavy woolen blanket, keeping him perfectly safe. He remembers standing in the ruined train station, staring at thousands of tiny, fluttering paper notes pinned to a wooden board. He remembers the agonizing fear of searching for his family's name. But in the gentle light of his final evening, he does not feel the fear. He only feels the overwhelming, fierce love that compelled 1,000,000 broken people to write those notes in the first place. He sees the paper scraps glowing in the dark, a constellation of hope that guided him back to the light. All the pain, all the hunger, and all the profound, silent sorrow of his youth have been distilled down into a deep, abiding gratitude. He realizes, as his breathing slows to the rhythm of a calm ocean tide, that the great, terrible storm of his early life was simply the price he paid for the quiet. Beside his futon, his daughter kneels on the woven tatami mat. She moves with a profound, quiet grace. She dips a small, soft cotton cloth into a wooden basin of warm water. She wrings it out and gently, so very gently, presses it against her father's forehead. She wipes the faint sheen of perspiration from his brow, her touch as light as a falling feather. She does not speak. There are no words large enough to encompass the transition that is happening in this room. She simply looks at his withered face, memorizing the lines, mapping the quiet dignity of his features. She knows the heavy, invisible rucksack he has carried his entire life. She knows the unspoken sacrifices he made so that she could grow up in a house filled with laughter, sunlight, and full bowls of rice. With her gentle touch, she is offering him a silent, beautiful permission. You have done so well, the damp cloth seems to whisper against his skin. You have kept us safe. The harvest is in. The doors are locked. The house is warm. You do not have to stand guard anymore. You may go to sleep. The old man feels the warmth of the water. He feels the infinite, fierce love of his daughter sitting beside him. A tiny, almost imperceptible sigh escapes his lips. It is a sigh of absolute, profound surrender. In the deepest corners of his mind, the room begins to expand. The paper walls dissolve into a vast, luminous expanse of soft, golden light. He is no longer lying on a futon in the suburbs. He is standing at the edge of a beautiful, shimmering river. The water is perfectly clear, tumbling over smooth gray stones, catching the golden light of a sun that never sets. The air is cool and smells of blooming jasmine and damp, sweet earth. And waiting for him on the other side of the river are the boys. They are exactly as he remembers them, before the world caught fire. They are wearing simple, clean cotton shirts. Their faces are bright, unlined by worry, and their eyes are shining with joy. The friend who shared the tiny piece of brown sugar in the snow is there. The boy who dreamed of the cold mountain stream is there. The comrades who vanished into the green shadows of the jungle are standing on the bank, smiling, waving their hands gently in the warm air. They have not been lost in the dark. They have been waiting for him here, in the light, keeping a place by the water. They do not look at him with sorrow. They look at him with a profound, radiant pride. They know the long, agonizing road he has walked. They know how heavy the years were, and how bravely he carried their memories when they could not carry themselves. One of them steps forward to the edge of the water and extends a hand. The old man looks down at himself. The heavy, aching frailty of his ancient body has vanished. He feels impossibly light, as if he is made of the very morning mist. He steps into the cool, rushing water. It does not pull at him, it gently supports him, washing away the very last traces of the dust and the ash. He reaches out and takes his friend's hand. Back in the quiet room, the shadows have stretched across the floor, and the evening star has appeared in the window, a single, piercing point of brilliant silver against the deep indigo sky. The daughter, still kneeling by the futon, watches her father's chest rise one final, slow time. The breath leaves him like a soft breeze moving through a field of tall grass. And then, there is absolute, perfect stillness. The struggle is over. The long, terrifying noise of the 20th century, which echoed in his bones for so many decades, has finally faded into nothingness. He has slipped out of the heavy, tangled garments of history and stepped into a well-deserved, eternal rest. The daughter bows her head, pressing her face against the edge of his quilt. She weeps, but her tears are quiet, born of a deep, beautiful sorrow that is entirely intertwined with gratitude. She is crying for the loss of her father, but she is also weeping for the beautiful, complete closing of a circle. Outside the house, the country he leaves behind continues to hum with life. The sleek, silent bullet trains glide effortlessly across the valleys, crossing bridges built over the very ruins he once walked through. Millions of lights begin to flicker on in the towering cities, glowing like a vast ocean of grounded stars. In millions of homes, families are sitting down to warm meals, children are doing their homework, and parents are sliding paper doors shut against the cool night air. This entire, sprawling, peaceful nation is his monument. It is the breathtaking masterpiece built by a generation of men who returned from the darkness with empty hands and broken hearts, and decided to plant seeds in the ashes. They traded their youth and their innocence to buy a forever quiet future for the children they would eventually hold. The final sunset has fallen on their era. The keepers of the memory have joined the ghosts they spent a lifetime honoring. But the peace they painstakingly constructed remains. It is woven into the very fabric of the country, resting in the quiet courtyards of the temples, and the soft, green leaves of the cherry trees, and in the uninterrupted sleep of the grandchildren who will never know the sound of a siren. The room is completely silent now. It is a deep, comforting, and exquisite silence. It is the tranquil silence the old soldier spent his entire life seeking. And as the moonlight filters softly through the paper screens, casting a gentle, silver glow over his resting face, the long, incredibly beautiful journey of the survivor is finally complete.